welcome back to UnchartedX. This is Ben, and this video is another video swapcast with my good friends Kyle and Russ, the venerable brothers of the Serpent. In this episode, we're taking a deep dive look at all of my footage of a few places in Peru. We're starting with Ollantaytambo, which is really probably my favorite overall site in Peru. It's just a remarkable little spot. It's skipped by a lot of people as it's the gateway to Machu Picchu. It's where you board the train when you go there. But it really has some incredible secrets if you go looking closely at it. I think this site is the best example of a site with the three disparate and different styles of architecture that you see in South America all mixed together. You have the Qorikancha, which is the older monolithic style that's really carved out of living rock, almost as if the rock looked like it was flowing. It typically looks incredibly ancient. You have the Qorikancha, which is the typical megalithic style, the cellular architecture of all of the polygonal blocks, the stuff that Peru is really famous for. And then you have Qorikancha, which is what I would characterize as the Inca work, these small stones, local stones, typically done maybe with some mud mortar. You have all of these three styles really mixed together at Ollantaytambo. We're also getting into the Qorikancha, which is the megalithic structure at the center of Cusco. We kind of mentioned that in the previous episodes about Sacsayhuaman. I think it was all connected together. But the Qorikancha is somewhat unique in its particular style of megalithic architecture. You see a lot of the Qorikancha here, which is the cellular work, but it's very, very fine work. You also see represented some of the shapes that you see the Inca later on tried to replicate. And then lastly, we're going to take a look at a place that's not often visited. It's another site around Cusco called the Temple of the Moon. And this is a very much Qorikancha structure. This is one of the oldest sites, I think. It looks incredibly ancient, and it is mostly made up of that older style of monolithic work that's carved into the mountainside itself. It's just an intriguing site. So in any case, I'll let us get on with it in the podcast. I hope you enjoy, and I will see you all in the next one. Cheers.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are once again joined by Ben from UnchartedX. This is the fourth. Is this the fourth one of this swapcast?
I think it is.
I think so. Yeah. I think it's the fourth one. And this time we're staying in Peru, and we're going to look at Ollantaytambo and the Qorikancha.
Yep.
And one other site. Which
Indeed.
Site was it?
The Temple of the Moon. It's one of the sites up around Cusco. It's not something that typically gets a lot of exposure, as far as I can tell. It's a really interesting site. Little interesting contrast to some of the other styles that you typically see. But yeah, good fun. We'll see how we go for time. But yeah, I've got all of those lined up. Should be interesting.
All right, fantastic. Yeah, I have to say, the Egypt stuff is always fascinating. But there's something about, and I think we talked about this last time with Matt. There's something about the Peruvian ruins,
right.
Especially the more megalithic stuff, and then of course the stuff that to us looks very old, that's carved out of the living rock. That's haunting. It's just it's so enigmatic. Both in style, and trying to comprehend how they accomplished it, as well as in a lot of cases, what the hell is it for? When you're looking at these strange shapes carved out of the stone, and you're just like, what were they doing? Like, what was even the purpose of this? So.
I feel you.
It's a mystery all the way.
I don't get it. I mean, there's definitely this level of enigma that seems to come with the South American stuff that's at a high level. You can really see the civilization touch. I think you relate a little bit more to some of the stuff in Egypt almost, and then it's just as you say, the Peruvian and South American, a lot of it is just, it's hard to imagine what they were thinking when it first happened. Like, yeah, there's so many examples of that, and particularly the Qorikancha stuff, which is the oldest sort of monolithic style. It's all these shapes that are carved out of mountains. Yeah, and they're not all. I mean, some of them may have been quarried, but I mean, a lot of it isn't quarried. Like there's deliberate shapes and deliberate things going on that you wouldn't have done if you were just quarrying there. And we'll see a ton of examples of it, but it's a little frustrating because most of the time you end up in South America, it's like you just don't know. Like I think there's just so much more mystery because there's. To me, there's a bigger gap. Like there's just you don't have we have kind of the dynastic Egyptian connection, if you like, that they flew on. I feel like they flowed on from that precursor culture, and there's something there. But in South America, it seems like there's a much bigger gap between the megalithic builders and then the later cultures. And even though they respected and revered all of the work, it's hard to sort of comprehend its purpose or what it was for, or even how it was done. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
frustrating. You end up with like, I don't know all the time.
Exactly, and it's again with the three styles, it's strange because when we look at the middle style, the second one, it's beautiful, and yet still you're like, how did they do that? You know, that's the first question. You're just like, how did they even do that? And then you can tell that they're sort of, like you've pointed out many times, that they're sort of enclosing this older style that's you know, it's like you say, monolithic, or even just rock cut out of stone that's in the mountain.
Yeah.
And I wonder if those people, the second style builders, even knew what the first style was for. You know.
Yeah. I wondered the same thing.
Yeah, in the same way that you see the Inca come along and then they build on top of all of it. And did they know what the second people were doing? You know, it's and that's the other thing, is in Egypt, the most enigmatic structures clearly are the ones that have no writing on them.
Right.
You know, they're completely bare, and they're beautiful, monolithic, you know, megalithic style, and you just look at it, and you kind of have this mystery because it's completely unmarked, or they found a statue or a piece of a head somewhere nearby, and they're like, all right, that guy built it. But, you know, we don't really know because there's no writing on the stone. And it's the same way with these. We see these animal figures. There's snakes. There's a what looks like maybe a puma or a cat, or maybe a lizard in some cases. But there's it's just, you know, there's three styles of building, and I'm wondering if any of the people that did any of the building knew anything about the other people that did the building. That's the question. Right. Is like, how long between these styles was there?
Yeah, right. And I think one of the things you can see, particularly with the oldest style, is that and it's just, look, I'm not a geologist, and it's always hard to tell these things from the eye, but it looks so ancient, like particularly the old style, and we'll see that at the Temple of the Moon, which is primarily that Hanan Pacha old, I call it the oldest style, but it's that monolithic living rock. It's which mostly shapes carved from an existing like rock outcropping, not so much walls made from, you know, cellular stones, and it just looks so old. And I agree, like, who knows, there's definitely some sort of reverent, they recognized that they were looking at something that either was special, or it had some meaning, or they just found it profound because they understood how difficult this work was. That's when you end up with this protection and this inheritance, I think, and this sense of reverence. And we find that and I love, the best example is really how when you go to these sites, how you feel about it when you're interested, not just a tourist passing by like for no reason, but if you're actually interested in the topic and you go to these sites, you find it profound and interesting. I think the same thing has happened in the past. So, but whether they have any deeper connection to the prior builders, I don't know either. It doesn't feel like it. Almost, it's like, well, we're going to preserve this. We're going to make this our sacred site. We're going to add our touches to it. Use it for our purposes. And that happened a couple different times. That's what it seems like. It's like it wasn't just the Inca, and then at least once or twice before that. It seems to be what's happened. And even today, we're adding our touches to it. You know, we're like, I'll flip over here so we can, you guys can see that.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is, and I'll roll the video in a second, but this is Ollantaytambo, and we're adding our touches to it. Like, we make it a tourist site. It's not like an elites only, ceremonial site. Although certainly in our civilization, some of these sites like the Sphinx and the pyramids have been used as such, but these days they're tourist sites, and we add our touches to them. It's sort of, we're just following on, I think, to the same thing that's happened in the past. But yeah, I hate ending up at that same place all the time, which is, I just don't know. It's a lot of it is hard to explain.
Yeah. Well, I think that's actually important, is to start from that, like to acknowledge, okay, we don't know.
Right.
And then you can start asking the interesting questions, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, sure, we found potsherds and we found datable material that relate to different cultures and styles, but that doesn't mean that they're responsible for the stonework. It means that the place has been occupied and used. And, in 1,000 years, when you find this sign here, the Parque Arqueológico Nacional Ollantaytambo, that maybe that's, that'll be evidence that says, oh, it was these people that made it. It's the same. I think it's hard to, there's a relationship thing that happens with how the story gets dated into history. And of course, this is one of those sites that they more or less attribute to the Inca. There's the Quilca culture, a couple other cultures as well, the precursors. But most of the work, they will tell you, was done by the Inca, being the largest known civilization in that time, in that era. And it's really weird with the dating too, because it's, 50. Inca civilization was 150 years old from start to finish, more or less. And they're certainly not the oldest. I mean, there's acknowledged. Peru's this real mystery. You've got the Corral and 5,000-year-old sites like that, where there's pyramids up in the desert. You've got a site that we should look at is Corral, but another one is Chavan Temple, which is thousands of years old. So all of these precursor cultures that also did some pretty impressive work, but it's not the Sacred Valley. So the Sacred Valley typically gets attributed to the Inca, more or less.
What about the? Am I going to get this wrong? Chulpas, the towers.
Chulpa Towers. Yeah, that's another place. Chulpa. Yeah, it's Silistani, I think the name is of the site. Yeah, it's we'll look at that one as well at some point. That's around Lake Titicaca. That's straight up same megalithic work. Different form in the towers, but the blocks and there's actually some gigantic. People know the towers, but at that site there's also that's a place that also looks immeasurably old. It looks like it's been horrendously damaged. Like there is remnants of walls with these giant blocks in them. Like some of the biggest single piece cellular blocks that you'll see anywhere in Peru are at that site. Like 10 feet tall and like almost Sacsayhuaman style.
Wow.
Size. There's a bunch of blocks on walls, and it's just been jumbled up, and that whole site's just a mess of blocks and things. And I think a lot of those towers have been put back together, and some of them have been repaired, not just by us, but also before us. But in general, like that place looks really old, really weathered, and that's a good one to look at in the future. But let's maybe we can talk about this as we go too. But Ollantaytambo, so. I'll let this roll, but just so rough geographical description of it. I mean, this is one of the sites in the Sacred Valley. This is where you catch the train. Most people come here to catch the train to go to Machu Picchu, but the site's worth looking at. And it's built into a very steep hill, which we'll see here. It's in a valley. There's mountains all around it. Part of the site runs up the side of one of these mountains and around it. In fact, it spreads out on a couple different sites. And there's a town at the bottom, in between these mountains, if you like. And that's always been a town, and it's still a town today, called Ollantaytambo. It has hotels, you can stay there. It's like kind of like a mini Cusco. It's a nice little spot. So let me do this, and I'll mute this audio too, because it's just wind noise mostly. But we'll get some audio out of it later.
Yeah, look at those mountains. Wow, and the terracing.
Yeah, right. So the Sacred Valley's super terraced, and we'll get a closer look at that on the far mountain. I don't know if you can see it, but there is also work over there. They call those the granaries. We can talk about it a bit later on.
Okay.
But you see, one thing that I always like to mention is a lot of this work is Inca. A lot of it is terracing that the Inca did. Like that's one thing that they definitely indelibly left their mark on the hillsides through the Sacred Valley. They're incredible. They sculpted the mountainsides. They made gardens out of them. The terracing work, and it's all done with these little stones. And there's a real significant difference between it and the megalithic work. And that's a good example. You have the bottom layer here is megalithic, and then the Inca have built a lot of those walls in between. So that some of these terracing layers may not have fully existed like this originally. And again, obviously heavily damaged. There is just rock and cut rock everywhere. Like, real weird, just buried in the stone. And then notice on this one, you've got sort of cut faces plus these big scoop marks on the block.
Yep.
See those scoop marks? It's kind of nutty. Almost as if something.
What looks like a random boulder, but it's been cut in half, or like there's a sheer face on one side of it. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I think that was probably my hand pointing out scoop marks as we were walking past it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, so where we're walking here is this kind of follows along the bottom level, like the ground level, if you like, at the bottom of where the terracing starts, and looks at. There's some really good examples of where you see a lot of megalithic blocks and then a lot of other styles. So you see it everywhere here. This is a great site for looking at the three different styles of stonework. So as we go through this, pay close attention to where you see obvious megalithic work, how it's been repaired with later Inca work, and then also where you'll see this in a lot of places, the Hanan Pacha, the monolithic work, the original work, which I would classify this as. Like this is a working water feature. The water's not flowing a lot right now, but this is one of those incredible shapes that's sort of been wrought into stone. And you get
multiple inside corners. Just
Yeah.
and it's just an aesthetic design, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Seems to be.
Lots of work on there, and then you can tell that the outside has been either is damaged in some places, and maybe somebody tried to fix some areas. Yeah, very interesting.
And the nice thing about it, we'll go through the footage and then we'll look at photos after, because the photos will give us a cleaner look at some of these individual objects, but the video kind of gives you a bit of context for where it all is. Yeah, you get told some stories about that's a very famous fountain. About how the water doesn't, like, it come when it's flowing properly, it spurts out, doesn't touch it. There's some strange things. There's some real nice lentil blocks that are obviously been recycled from, megalithic sites and then built as part of probably the original Inca settlement. You can see the modern town, still mud brick and adobe in the background. It's just a beautiful place. The Sacred Valley in Peru just is spectacular under any circumstances.
Basically walls of mountains on either side.
Yeah. Steep mountains. Yeah, and you're up.
Very steep.
Yeah, that's interesting that the modern structures are mud brick.
Right.
Well, yeah.
Ancient ones are giant blocks.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it reminds me of that story about Egypt with the Egypt Rising statue made in the 50s that made from granite. They bolted it together, but they had to send it to Italy to be polished because Egypt couldn't polish the granite stone in the 1950s. I'm like, really strange that.
Wow, look at those mountains. That's just awesome.
Yeah, I remember this was a breezy day. This was 2016, this footage. We were in here with, this is the group of the people you'll see, the group I was with, small group.
Is that terracing way up there on that?
It is.
Sorry.
There is terracing on that far hill. There's also these structures. They would call them the granaries up on the hill behind us. Maybe I can go back real quick.
Yeah, I think I've seen some pictures of those.
Yeah, and I have pictures of them as well. It's up here behind this tree, and I'll just pause it real quick when it gets here.
Yeah, you can see some regular.
Yeah. So there's staircases, and there's these, and that's like stone terracing and structures, and they would. The story they tell you is the Inca used them as grain storage because it was cool. It was always cold, like the wind would blow through there to stay dry. Whether or not that's...
They hauled all their grain up there to store it.
That's a lot of... Right? You can see the switchbacks. Like it's the mountain goat people, that's for sure.
So
like
is there any evidence or research on, say, previous water levels there, like during other time periods when the ocean levels were different? Like, are there high water marks anywhere on those mountains?
Not that I know of in the Sacred Valley, because you do have a river at the bottom, and I'm sure there's maybe some. I'm sure that's been up and down, but not like. I don't know about like cataclysmic levels of water through the Sacred Valley. For sure, there is. It's as part of the work that I'm slowly trying to get through with Poznansky's book about Tiwanaku that has a lot about Lake Titicaca. There's a lot. I think the interesting studying. I think because a lot of the water I think flows from there, and I think that's. That might tell us more. I need to learn more about it, basically, about the historical levels of that lake, because I think it has a lot to do with Tiwanaku. But here, I mean, in this valley, this is a true valley. Like, this would have been... I don't think at any time is this like a river that, it's a raging river today. And I can only imagine if it was like 100 times the size that it is now. But, yeah, I don't know about historical levels in the actual Sacred Valley.
What about ice in the mountains?
There's definitely still ice. There's still a lot of, like, in the Andes.
Yeah, isn't there permanent ice on some of the mountaintops?
Well, you have stuff that goes up to 20,000 feet, more or less.
Right, and I think that I can't remember where I read this, but I was reading about that there may have been more of that during the last ice age. That there may have been a lot more ice in those mountains.
Well, I imagine there was, because anything like there must have been. Because same as Kilimanjaro, it's just Kilimanjaro in particular is like equatorial, and it's glacier. Everyone makes a big song and dance about, there's no ice on Kilimanjaro, it's melting. It's been melting for 12,000 years, funnily enough, since the end of the last ice age. Like it's, like that's what's happening. But it's same thing, I think, in the ice packs in the Andes. And some of the pictures I've got, I don't know if we get into them here, but as you drive between the Sacred Valley and Bolivia, you go up over 14,000 feet through the pass. You see the big Andes mountain range, and there's a lot of it's just snow capped and always ice. This is
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say this is that area I talked about. That was that Malco Arabaldo, one of the guys we had on this trip, sort of has identified, or he thinks he's identified as a calendaring system, or just the shadow that these nubs cast on this wall. But again, this is obviously not quarried. Like, this was carved, and these shapes have been made almost like bas relief or high relief for some reason.
Yeah, see, and this has always bothered me with these nubs. You know, people wonder, are they lifting things or are they eroted? You know, I mean, like, well, okay, why did they make them on the freaking mountainside?
Yeah.
You know, like those aren't for lifting.
Yeah, that's a great point.
It's not for lifting. This is true. Those ones aren't for lifting. I mean, it's clothesline.
And they're also not geopolymer injection ports, unless they're trying to say that they made the entire mountain, right?
They're not that either. Yeah. Well, you couldn't look at the rope at anything vertical; it'd slip right off it. It's obviously, I mean, you could hang something off it, but it seems like a lot of effort to go to make like a clothesline.
Yeah, you have to cut, I don't know, like a ton of material off of that face to leave that one nub.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Because that nub sticks out, 6 inches? So you've got to cut all that material off that face to the height of a person to leave that nub there.
It's a little bigger than that, actually. It's it's hard to see the scale until we see pictures later on with people standing in it. Yeah, there you go. So it's
okay. Yeah,
more
I can
like
see
a
that.
foot.
Yeah, maybe
yeah,
foot.
closer to a foot.
So what are the? I mean, so they talk about it being a calendar. Is there? I mean, is there a model that someone's come up with for how it's a calendar?
So apparently Malco has, and Malco Arabal is the guy. He's not my favorite person, but he's actually in that BAM documentary. He's a very proud sort of Inca traditionalist, and he's done some interesting work with alignments. And his book's I think it's in Spanish, so I'm not sure. But he was talking about it when we were there, and I haven't done any more research to see what he's done. But I know he's been in a few documentaries. But we were beneath his time on this trip. It was funny. This trip was only about 10 people. It was done as like a special favor to Elizabeth Arjuna, who's was the right-hand woman to the current keeper of the Mayan calendar. She's a Guatemalan. She's an 85. There's some backstory to it, and she had arranged for Malco to come with it. And he's like, I'm used to taking groups of 60 people. And as soon as he'd heard that I'd been to Peru before, he didn't like that. He didn't like that I even knew who Brian Forrester was. And he was, you must think the aliens did it kind of thing. He's very proud. He's like very much against any idea that the Inca didn't do everything. And he had a reason for why everything is the way it is, and why the styles are so different. He would just call that the organic style. But he was very standoffish the whole time. But I don't know. And in fact, I just didn't argue with him. But the whole group kind of was like, this guy, and he's like, I mean, would make comments like, "Don't give credit cards to women," kind of thing. It's like, dude, what are you?
Oh wow.
Yeah, and our group was almost all women, which so that impressed them.
Right.
Anyway,
yeah, I'm sure
not to talk too much about that, but it's
don't
this
give credit cards to me for sure, though. For sure.
Right. Yeah.
Give me the credit.
Yeah. I'll hand them all
the
to Kyle.
credit.
He can wreck up all the debt. Man, so the footage has been moving past the mountain here, and it looks like there's cut faces all over it.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yes, there's staircases everywhere. This is like the stuff at Sacsayhuaman. There is cut faces everywhere on the rock, in big flat faces.
Yeah.
Shaped everywhere for some reason. And even these blocks that are then inset into it with these squares and the holes. And then the other thing to note as we pan through here is obviously you see the obvious Inca work, and then you get into this section of where they've piled up a bunch of the megalithic work. So this is like all three styles represented in this one picture. You've got the old sort of Hanan Pacha work into the sides of the mountain. You've got what obviously came after was the megalithic work, and then what came after that is the Inca style, like the rough style. And just as we pan through here, I think it's like clear as day, one of the best areas in Peru to see it. Yeah.
Well, it's going back to the nubs in the wall. That seems to be a clear connection between the
Hanan Pacha
and the Udon Pancha.
Yeah.
Yep.
They both use the nubs, yeah.
They both got nubs.
Well, and the Inca, and in Machu Picchu, the same thing. The Inca would make stuff to look like it had nubs. They would find a nub-shaped block, would make these nub-shaped blocks, and would insert them into these rough stone walls.
And then they use logs to kind of simulate the nubs sticking out of the walls, too.
Right, right.
But it's interesting to think about it as some kind of calendar or something to signify something going on with the
Shadow.
sun, shadow,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
that it might have been intentionally incorporated into the wall in such a pattern to mean something. That would be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, but in that one spot, now you can clearly see. Actually, if we back that up, that's one
look
thing
at
I
that.
just noticed was like a water where water had obviously run.
Yep, there's a channel.
Yeah, exactly. And let me just zoom this in a little bit so I can manipulate it.
That wall is amazing. It's only 2 blocks high, or maybe it's actually 3. I guess there's.
This here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
See
I
the
see that. Yeah.
The channel kind of comes through the rock here, and then runs down here, and where
down
there's
there.
obviously
Oh
been
my
water flowing at some point.
God, I would love to have seen that fully functioning.
Yeah.
Look at those cubes.
Cubes of granite, and that's the thing. This
Yeah.
site's granite, and like this nice straight line here too. I mean, stuff has been. These walls have been shaped. I mean, and again,
Yeah.
it just looks ancient. Like the patinaing plus just the weathering. It's the same.
Yeah.
I don't know if the mountainside stone's the same as this granite stone. So the granite stone that isn't dismounted. The granite, the quarry for this stuff, and particularly when we get to the top of Ollantaytambo, the really big stuff. That all came from the other mountain range. Like
man.
it's something like 4 or 5 kilometers away, but it's all up and then across the river, then up again. And we'll see. Now this little inset here is one of my favorite parts of Ollantaytambo. Shows you it's not a quarry, and see if you guys can guess why when we get there. It's this stuff that's cut out of the wall top left, and I'll definitely aim the camera at it.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see it.
There's the block
Is
there.
that a slab of rock right
Yeah,
there? Or is-
big flat slab of rock that came from somewhere. This thing here, though, this really
What?
works my noodle because
Yeah, there's a space in the middle there that's sticking out.
yeah, right. It's
How did they do that?
how did they do that? Like that's not a quarry. If that's quarrying, how do you make the back cut? You can't cut that piece of rock out. That's a
Yeah.
shape that's been carved into the rock for some reason.
Yeah.
Not a quarried piece of stone.
Pouring would be stair-stepped.
Well,
Yeah.
you have to be able to cut the
You
back.
got to be able to cut
Exactly, you
the back.
gotta
which
cut the
means you gotta
back.
start from the top and cut down. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
That's a
no
great
access
point.
to the back cut here, right? This isn't a
Yeah.
block of stone, and this is all.
The chamois worm can turn
The chamois worm.
90 degrees.
There you go. The chamois has a little. That's a really useful feature.
It has
for
a,
that thing.
yeah. Well, you got to buy the back cutter attachment.
Yes. I don't tell you that in the first contract, but it's like we really need this piece. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. That's a great point. Mm-hmm. That second inset down there would need.
Now, are those like up at the top there? There are a bunch of nubs sticking
Is
out
that
of that.
nubs and more flat? Yeah, flat
it's-
faces.
we're-
Way up high.
We're seeing
way
the
up
Zoom
high?
picture, so it's a little blurry. It's hard, we're not
Yeah.
seeing it in full
It'll look-
HD.
It will look better in the video. Yes, but up here,
Yeah.
there is.
Yeah.
Yep. And in fact,
There's
this stuff.
looks like there's a whole bunch at the top above. You can't. They're out of the frame at this point.
Back up a little bit. Oh yeah, I see them.
Yeah.
Those are. This one's a nub. These look like bushes to me. Just these regular bushes. This
okay.
might be a growth. But this stuff goes up the hill, and in fact, there's a. I'm sure I've got the picture somewhere, but there's a shape of the mountain where the Inca will tell you, well, this is a condor head. It's a falcon. It's a bird head, and. This is the same thing. I do have a video in my Sacsayhuaman video where I talk about all the shapes because people see these shapes in the stones and certainly the Inca did. But it's, I kind of, my opinion is it's something like seeing shapes in clouds. Like we're pattern recognition animals. We'll see the shapes we're looking to see. And I'm not sure that any of that was an original intention to look like these animals. I just think it's been found to look that way and then put into the culture through subsequent cultures like the Inca.
Yeah.
Because it's very, very subjective. It's very, and there's all sorts of, like, there's sometimes I'll look at it from, well, you can see if you look at it from, 2,000 feet altitude, the whole city of Cusco, and there's just the Puma head up here, Sacsayhuaman, and the Cusco's the body, and then it's all very dependent on perspective and how you look at it. And like, yeah,
Right.
it's hard for me
That's a hard question. You just don't know. I mean,
Right.
maybe they intended that, but
yeah.
you can't say whether they did or not. But certainly, if
big
somebody
same
sat down
one.
and planned the city out, they would be planning out the outline, and maybe the guy who did it was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna draw a cat," right?
Yeah.
But
Right.
maybe not. It's
Maybe
just
not.
hard to tell.
Yeah, and some of them, and depending on the interpretation, like a lot of them are very stylized, and other ones are less stylized.
Right.
So it's
kind of like the pause in the wall at Sacsayhuaman. It's
Right,
like,
exactly.
Once you see one, you start looking for them everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And these
He's
6
like,
blocks in a row.
We're going
make
to
a
build
shape.
this city on a mountain.
I nearly spat it everywhere.
But
Mountain.
those flat faces and stuff, the other
right,
thing they
meow.
bring to mind is like some kind of a facet or
Yeah.
attaching some structure to. You would want to flatten it, and I don't know.
Yeah, it does
Yeah.
look like stuff was plugged into the mountain there. That's
Yeah,
what you mean.
and so Napahuaca is the other place like that. It looks like a big old power socket, and it's weird. Like Napahuaca, Napa Iglesia, that has that thing. It's like this is the only bluestone outcropping. So this block, we're going to look at some pictures of it later. Very interesting shapes in that one. It's like a huge block in the ground that has these big channels cut out of it, and I've got photos of it later. We'll get back to it. But there's obviously we're up several levels in the terracing here.
This terracing. I just have to say that is an incredible amount of work. If you're
isn't
just
it?
doing this by hand, hand tools. I
Yeah.
mean, oh my God, I can't even imagine.
And
Yeah.
think about
Cutting away all of that dirt first, then doing something with it, whatever building, and then
Putting it
building the
back in.
walls. Obviously, backfilling, engineering the walls to be good retaining walls that are obviously still standing. They look very straight.
Mm-hmm.
That's just
they're
that's an
holding back
incredible.
hundreds of tons of
huge-
material from falling down the mountain, and they have been
Yep.
for centuries.
It's an
That's-
incredible engineering feat. Retaining walls are notorious for bulging and cracking and eventually collapsing.
Yeah,
But
it's-
just the amount of materials that had to be cut and moved and filled in order to farm in it. You had to have topsoil as opposed to just the rocky rubble. And
right. Yeah, they probably pulled the soil. They probably moved the soil up there. The Inca.
Yeah.
You kind of have megalithic terracing at the top. These last couple layers are megalithic, and then you have the Inca work. But yeah, it's and maybe they even had to ship the dirt up here. I wouldn't be surprised. Like that's just
wouldn't either.
they had some manpower. Like they did some incredible things on the hillsides.
And why? Why would you? Did the valley not provide enough farmland?
I think so. Yeah, no, that's why there wasn't that much farm. Like it's steep everywhere. There's very little flat land in the Sacred Valley. And the other thing that is the Inca were master farmers, really. So they had agricultural zones at different elevations. So down in the jungle zones, they'd grow different fruit to the intermediate zones, and in the
Yes.
high altitude zones,
Absolutely.
they would plant different crops, and they'd plan that. They would create their system and all of their agriculture around it.
It's hard to imagine that in 150 years, like that an entire culture would just move into a place and take on that monumental work. Why
Right.
did you just? If you're already on the move, why did you decide to go there? If that's where if you're going to be
Well-
farming, we'll just cut the sides of the mountain away and.
I think it's possibly because they found Cusco. They probably found this abandoned megalithic city, and they were like the high Incas and the bosses of of everyone were like, this is where we're parking here, so make it work,
That's
and so this
incredible.
is
It must
where we
be
get
beautiful.
yeah, this is where we get to the top and the really big stuff. These are all granite, big, massive granite blocks, and again, according to a lot of people, this is the organic style. So this was done on purpose.
Right.
All right. This wasn't repaired later. This was
It's like the nubs scale up with the size of
Yes.
the block.
yeah. These are big shapes and big stones, and these all came from the top of the next mountain. There's a quarry up there for a lot of that stuff.
Well, we're already at the first break. So let's
Okay.
take a break and come back and look at good grief, these blocks. I don't want to take a
Awesome,
break,
buddy.
but we got to take
And
a
we'll
break.
get to the big stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
And we are back. UnchartedX, Brothers of the Serpent podcast, looking at Ollantaytambo and getting to the real megalithic stuff at the top here. But I wanted to ask you, Ben, if there's anything about the estimates of stone moved in all of the Inca civilization, because the idea is that, the conventional idea is that they did all of this work, right? And if they existed for 150 years, has
busy.
anyone really gone through and done tried to estimate the complete amount of stones that they moved. Because, for example, in Egypt, they look at a structure like the Great Pyramid and say, well, it took 20 years, and then you can come up with how many stones they had to lay per minute, or however per hour, to get that structure. And this just seems like, for a group of people that were here for 150 years, everything that exists here in terms of megalithic stonework, even down to the small stuff and the earthworks, it's almost unimaginable how they could have pulled all this off in such a short amount of time.
It's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if anybody's studied it, but I agree with the with the premise for sure. Like that, it's a tremendous amount of work. Even and then particularly when you include the work the Inca themselves did, it's just the terracing. But they shifted. I mean, this is, I don't know what the estimates of the population were. It was a few million people, I think. It may have been as high as that many for the actual Inca civilization. I don't know. But I'd be interested to see it. Like you say, that they've done the calculations on things like the Great Pyramid, which I think is like one block every 5 minutes for 25 years.
A few million people, that's a lot.
That is a lot. It may not be that many. I don't know. I'm purely trying to. I know I've read something in the past, but I can't. I can't.
Yeah,
recall.
I'm just thinking about if they. It's hard for me to understand how. Well, I guess maybe if they were moving, all of their people, and then 150 years later, there's 1 million of them. That's a lot of people. But I guess you could imagine a couple of 100,000 people on the move.
Yeah.
Through that valley, but I don't know.
Well, I think they grew to that over time. I think there was I don't know how many started. In fact, it's a good question. I could go and look. We could probably Google it relatively quickly.
We need economists to take a look at this kind of stuff and try to figure out, like, well, what type of organization would it require?
Yeah, you need logistics guys and economists.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good point, because that's one of the issues you have with places like, Tiwanaku in particular, because of the altitude and the food situation. You have to, how many people, how much food do you need, how much agricultural land do you need, and the challenge in some of these places is the altitude. 13,000 feet, 12,500 feet. Well, way up. In a lot of cases, definitely above the tree line. Tiwanaku, this is generally a little bit lower, but not much. Like, this is all 10 to 12,000 feet. A lot of the Sacred Valley, huge, like massive in altitude. Difficult to grow food for a lot of people, hard to sustain large populations.
So I wonder what the CO2 level is there, because that's really what it is with the plants.
Right.
The higher you get, the more sparse the CO2, the less they can grow.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and so back in ancient times, it could have been totally different.
Yeah.
But the other interesting thing is, during the break we were talking about when the Inca were there. We were saying, or what were you saying? The 12th century,
the 16th, something like that.
It was, I think, 13 to 15, mid 15s or something like that. 13th to 16th century, or like a window in there. I believe something like that. I would have to look it up. Yeah,
that's in the Gothic cathedral period.
Yeah, right.
And maybe the high Gothic cathedral period. Which is also interesting, right? Suddenly pops up a civilization that's just doing incredible work with stone, and I'm not attributing the megaliths to them, but they still, nevertheless, did amazing stuff, and it's just out of nowhere, seemingly.
Right.
That's interesting.
It pops up out of nowhere. Yeah.
And we were in Colorado a while back looking at the cliff dwellings,
Chaco and Pueblo people.
Yeah, in at Mesa Verde.
Yep.
And it's the same deal. It's like they're living way up on the edges of these canyons inside these giant overhangs, and they've built all this amazing stuff out of stone, and cities under these overhangs, villages at least, and right at the same time.
Yep.
And then they vanish. Right,
Yeah.
They're there for a couple hundred years and they're gone after that. It's
interesting,
so strange. And how did they live way up there, and why did they choose that spot? It's just,
was it a warm period or something? It's well, because that's we grow portions, like typically, the Renaissance corresponds to a warming period, and the
Yep.
Dark Ages was a cooler period. I think weather and climate, whether or not your crops are going to grow a lot, and you can actually sort of go on those growth spurts that obviously must be required for this type of thing. So I'm sure that's what happened too with the Inca. Like that period, I don't think they started with that many people, but they certainly grew very quickly.
Yeah.
Probably because it was, they probably had plenty of food, you develop that civilization. You've got extra time, you can specialize, you can develop all the things that are required to end up with something like this.
Yeah, which is why it's, in some case, and I do want to get back to what we're looking at on the video here, but there are some questions about that, like the chicken or the egg problem. We see all the terracing, but to build all the terracing, you need a lot of people.
A lot of people to start.
But to feed a lot of people, you need a lot of terraces to feed them. So it's like, there's a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you can imagine them doing it in stages, but still, it's like, there's a lot of work there, requiring a lot of people doing a lot of work, and to feed those people, you need a lot of space to do the feeding. But if they're trying to build the place to make the food, to feed the people, to do the work, you get into this circle, and there's
exactly.
So I wonder if some of the terraces were there. I don't know.
Definitely they were. I think there is a lot of these sites have, like even here at Ollantaytambo, there are a number of terraces that are megalithic. Same thing at Machu Picchu. There's parts of them are megalithic for sure, and then I think that a lot of them have been added, and they've been repaired. I mean, this site's been repaired. It's a lot of people point to the blocks underneath these things. It's like there is accounts of the Inca standing up some of these blocks and trying to move them. Like they were fixing stuff up where they could. Like they would repair what they could. But in terms of the terracing, for sure, I think there's lots of those terraces were megalithic. There's a mix, but a lot of the Inca did far more though. And whether maybe there's a at a point here, there's some of it may have broken down as well. Like they might have repaired, and there might have been some shapes there that they were able to then work with to create their terracing. Because there's some sites that aren't as well maintained as this. Like this stuff, that's the other thing. This stuff's everywhere. Like you can walk around them. If you can hike up and down these mountains, then you'll find this stuff in the Sacred Valley. There's so much of it is outside of original official sites these days. It was everywhere. And before we started, I was showing you some images of a place that's up in the hills somewhere. It's not a tourist site. There's a town nearby, but it's got megalithic terracing. It's got that big sundial or moondial looking thing, and you have terraces that are definitely megalithic. And then there's blocks laying around. So I think they probably had it's similar to Egypt. Like they could use some of that infrastructure. At least I think there must have been enough to sustain and let them grow at some pace. That then they had to keep doing more and more to keep growing. But yeah, you're right. I mean,
and it seems like if the Inca did all of this on their own, this was their own sort of just way of doing things, then wherever they came from should have a bunch of this stuff too.
Right.
Yeah. If they migrated here, then where they came from should show all of this same type of work.
Well, so that's where you get to the Altiplano. So if you go with the idea that they came from the Lake Titicaca and the sort of Tiwanaku, Pumapunku area, that's the high plain. So that is flat land. Like that, you don't need to do terracing up there, but you're faced with the altitude issues. But there's huge amounts of flat land on the Altiplano, and then it seems like they, for whatever reason, that culture shifted down into the Sacred Valley, and then once you're in the valley, that's where you have to do the terracing.
Yeah. Okay. And I think doesn't Graham is it in Magicians of the Gods where he talks about that there's evidence of someone up there in the Altiplano doing very interesting work with crop plants, because you can't grow normal stuff up there. You can't grow grains and
right.
Can't grow fruit, but there's evidence that people were growing like a certain kind of tuber plant that then had to be processed in a certain way to make it not poisonous or whatever. So somebody knew what they were doing, at least.
I actually think there's also evidence for advanced agricultural techniques where they were shaping the earth into these mounds and growing plants and irrigating and I can't remember exactly where that source. It might have been Hancock's book, but I'm not sure.
Those they look like corrugated fields.
Exactly, corrugated fields, right? And they were definitely practicing some pretty advanced sort of massive agricultural techniques to do it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So on the video here, we're looking at this. There's the long block there that's up on top of all the little ones. That's
Yeah.
very interesting. Like
Yeah, back to the huge blocks.
yeah,
It is.
So we got a couch. That's a nice.
We got the couch, and then this is the and then this is the famous kind of iconic area of Machu Picchu with not Machu Picchu, Ollantaytambo, with these blocks that are to the left of it as we pan left. And there's
look how that couch has nubs on top of it.
there are these nubs on it, and whether or not see that block may have been oriented differently originally.
Yeah.
It's been put there. It's been moved there. It's had this foundation built. These blocks have either been repaired or pushed up, or they've had some reinforcing done. And they've been shifted, like they've reconstructed as much of this wall. But this actually goes around the corner as well. And as we pan left here, you'll see the quarry for these blocks at the top of the next mountain over. So this is where these stones have come from. And again,
I've always been fascinated with this wall too, with these just style of it. This giant block followed by the very narrow,
the
slim
shims
pieces.
blocks that are just perfectly fitted, and then another giant one.
Well, and there's also some shapes here. There's some carvings that have been. You see these. They'll tell you that this is the Chicana, like the Incan cross, the Andean cross. I'm sorry, well, okay, so yeah, you can see it on. Maybe I can.
I mean, I can see the stair step pattern, but I've never seen the cross.
Shoot, let me go back.
Whoop. Back
we
way up.
We went too far. Yeah. I'll back it up again.
Damn it, Ben, you went too far.
Damn it, I went too far this time. Yeah, so you can see the stair tap pattern. So there's if you imagine a cross, but this actually, the funny thing is this has too many steps in it for the Andean. The Andean cross has less steps in it, and that is a shape that's carved in a few places. But it's just again this loose interpretation of what may or may not have been something. I mean. Later on, we'll see a little clip with Rogerio talking, and he gives you the Inca version of this, where he'll talk about this shape in the stone, and that also there's a puma that was carved in here, and how he's sort of interpreting the shapes to mean a puma. I don't think that's what's going on here, but it's definitely how the Inca have interpreted it and used it.
And the other thing I would point out is the narrow rocks that join the giant megaliths also have tiny nubs.
They've got nubs.
The little nubs.
Little tiny nubs in it.
Yep. Definitely nubs.
So
Maybe those are the injection ports, huh?
Yeah.
It just seems like it's definitely a style thing, as opposed to, I mean, if we're throwing out the injection port because there's like crystal inclusions obvious in some of the stones, and then
we'll get to that.
They're coming out of the solid mountain.
Right.
It just looks like a style.
You think it's stylistic?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it must be. I don't know. I don't know. So top of this hill over here, you'll see the quarry. The quarry is this area up here. Wow. So they shipped all this stuff down here, and there's a raging river that they have to cross and then bring it up to the top of this mountain.
And it's granite?
Granite. Some of these are like 70 tons.
My God.
And so you saw some of the bigger pieces down lower. We'll go back down there as well.
There is strange like flaking on the sides too that is interesting to me.
Like
I have seen that happen with limestone. It'll big flakes can fall off the outside, but I don't know if granite. I guess it could do that.
We see that we saw that in the second pyramid as well, with the footage of the granite around there, where something's happened. That surface layer has come peeling off, kind of like that as well there. Similar, and whether it's a consequence of the vitrification of the stone, or if it's some evidence of cataclysmic damage, I don't really know. I don't know the explanation for why, and it doesn't happen everywhere either. Like it's in certain places.
It's kind of like. It makes me think that the tool that, and I'm going to tech here, but it seems like the tool itself left, like however it cut, it leaves this thin surface, and then the layer can peel off because it's actually been changed from the nature of the actual interior of the stone. There's another part of it where it's
so these are vitrified
right here. Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, they're shiny. They're like not everywhere, but there's there's vitrification here. Then there's flaking. Russ, that's a good point. It may be a result of the tool. And wait till we see there's something's happened at Karnak. So I think the next episode we're going to go probably back to Egypt and have another guest with us from that trip, and then and we'll get into Karnak, which is not a site I've been able to do videos about because I wasn't able to film until recently. But there's some incredible evidence of sort of the the nature of the stone changing there. Like there's some really strange things that have happened at that place. That there's still some of this stuff left that we can. Very interesting. Something's affected the stone much, and to a deeper degree than even what you see here with these chunks flaking off it.
Oh, okay.
This is a beautiful section of wall, by the way. And so megalithic terracing, right? That's a good example of like.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, so I've seen pictures of this block, and it has this like I don't know what to call it, a long nub, right?
Yeah,
or something, whatever that is.
Bar on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? You know, I don't know.
Beautiful.
And there's foundation below. Some nice sharp inside angles. They certainly did some of that stuff when they could.
And does this? So you've walked all over this site yourself. Does it look haphazard to you? Like, does it look to you like this site was that like it fell apart, or that it never was finished, or is it a bit of both?
It seems to me like it's definitely been damaged. Like that something happened. I don't know whether it was ever finished, but I think even if it was damaged. I don't get the same vibe of not finished. I get damaged from this, and that's what I get from a lot of South American stuff is damaged. And that's why you see these blocks laying around out here. And even just some of them, like the erosion on some of them is And so you've got these blocks laying here. Like this is clearly like a block that came from this structure.
Yeah, fell down the hill.
It's come down the hill somehow. And then, so
but there are blocks, aren't there? Aren't there blocks that were clearly...
there you go. And we'll get to that. Yeah, so there is a block from this building there's blocks, I think, in the river as well, like that were either left there, or there's at least one on the side of the road that leads away from Ollantaytambo, which actually you're right, that's a good indication that it wasn't finished.
Yeah,
but
or that the original builders were trying to fix it after something happened, and then they couldn't finish that or something like that.
Yeah, definitely something happened either way. I mean, even if it wasn't finished, it still then suffered damage. Right. So it's possible that it's both.
Yeah. God, look at that! Look at that protrusion right there.
Yeah, that's an unfinished. It would tell you they didn't finish carving it off or something. But it's like that seems pretty regular.
They didn't finish nubbing it out.
They didn't finish nubbing it out all the way. And there's more here. Like it just that's the randomness of this, right? Isn't it crazy? It's just I don't.
So
I can't explain it.
You think maybe the Inca stood these up and then put their masonry in between each one of the large megaliths there?
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases, either these were remaining here, or they've been stood up and it's been reconstructed by the Inca. Yeah, that's exactly
kind of what it seems like.
Yeah, I also
think
that those. Another possibility is that those blocks are staged, but not in place by the original builders, and the Inca came along, found them staged, and then just built their wall without moving them. Because they're kind of each one is set apart from the other one.
Right.
So you can imagine they're kind of in a line, and they're all staged to get put on this wall or something.
Yeah, and maybe the Inca then assembled them.
Yeah,
I mean, because they would put. I'm convinced that they were putting stuff back together where they could.
Right.
And they'd fix it. Otherwise, they'd use it if it was just laying around. It's one of my favorite walls. You were talking about the crystal incursions in the stone. You see that here, and we'll see some more in some pictures too.
That is just amazing. Now this wall has a lot of very prominent nubs for some reason.
Yep. This is Nubtown.
Nubtown.
And lichen.
Like very large lichen, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I would like to think that these nubs actually are saying something somehow, right?
That they're
almost like
it's Braille. Can you read it?
It's giant Braille.
That's the theory that the guys on Twitter, that the nub investigation team, that often discuss this on Twitter. That's more or less where they're thinking along those lines. They're investigating it from that perspective anyway, to say that it's possible that it was some form of language, that it does express something.
Yeah, like a sign. It doesn't.
Right.
It's aesthetically pleasing. It's like, well, this is 12th Street, so they just have some configuration up there depending on whatever their writing style was. It's sort of shorthand for. That'd be kind of cool. This is the northern side of town. This is the western gate.
Yeah.
This is whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Man, God, those.
Yeah.
But then that picture you were just showing with all those giant terraces with nubs all over them. I don't know. How are you going to read that?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. So I need to, and shortly, I think maybe before I even get this out, I'll get my chat with Hugh Newman out, and he talks about them being sort of a tuning aspect for resonance in a lot of these structures, like the overall resonance of them, connecting to the earth. And he had a very interesting explanation for the nubs, which I hadn't heard, and I was like, you know what, that actually, it kind of made sense to me.
That actually does, because you can change. You can, after the stone is in place, you can change its total mass,
right,
slightly to very precisely tune it. That's a really good point.
And he also then, same thing for the scoop mark. So it was sometimes the nub wasn't enough, removing nubs and those protrusions. It was like, now we got to scoop into the thing.
I like it. I definitely like that idea.
Yeah, it's just some more of these. So we're flipping through some images from the site, and I kind of want to get to, this is just, I mean, it's wonderful work.
Yeah. So this is the little water feature.
The water feature. Yeah, and I have
Were we looking at that on the show, or was that pre-show?
We were looking at on the video. Yeah,
we did. Yeah, I kind of want to get to this another area that's had water running through it, which is a feature on the site. Yeah, I kind of want to get. We'll get back up to the top. We may end up not getting to the Temple of the Moon today.
All right.
But have no fear, we shall get there.
All right. I was starting to get scared.
You get me started talking.
Is
so
there
more of these?
Is there real quick? Is there, like, as we're looking again at these flat surfaces carved in the mountains? Like, do you know if there's surfaces carved in really inaccessible places way up on those peaks? Is that possible? Because they already look sort of inaccessible in some cases, but like on that mountain, is there some of that way up there?
I would say even places like Huayna Picchu and Machu Picchu, very steep mountainsides. There's definitely work surfaces in some areas. There was not like, I don't know of any like sheer vertical faces though, and even that I wouldn't put it past the people that lived here to be able to climb it fearlessly and do, they seem to obviously been able to do that in any case. But yeah, I don't know. I know what you're saying, like the sheer verticality of some of it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that myself that I can recall, but there's definitely like, it's not for like trying to climb Huayna Picchu. It's very exposed and very steep, and just they would carve stairs into stuff, and almost felt like a sheer vertical face. But and then we humans, we can do crazy stuff. You've seen what's that documentary? The Alex he climbs up El Cap, free climbing, like free solo. You guys see free solo?
That's crazy. Yeah, humans do crazy stuff.
I know.
If you want an extremely tension-filled couple of hours, go and find free solo and watch that. That's Alex Honnold, I think. So free solo. He free climbed El Cap, no ropes, scampered up it in like a record time too. Just a couple of hours, several hours. But all right, let me put some purpose to that. I knew I'd have too many photos to try and just browse. All right. We'll try and catch up to where we were. How about that? We'll look at this megalithic stuff.
Yeah.
Because there was some, and there was one specific thing I did want to look at. Now that I remember, as we were looking down, where are the pictures down onto that block that was in the ground, and then we can flip back to the video. I will find it. I swear.
Yeah, no problem. I also noticed that, while you're looking, I'm just going to point out that very iconic shape that they make all the doors and windows. Yeah. There's something about that.
And they're not all doors and they're not all windows.
Right. Sometimes they're just like insets
in the walls. Yeah, I find that really interesting.
But they're always this same sort of
tapered,
like a trapezoidal shape. Yeah,
trapezoid,
and we'll see a lot of that in the next thing we'll go to in the next segments, the Qorikancha.
I'd like to know what the ratio is between the top and the bottom. Oh my gosh, the measurements. Yeah, what is that thing?
So he's looking down now at this giant. This block. Is part of the mountain, basically, right?
Either that or it's a big block that's embedded in the ground. Yeah, so it's
at the bottom of the terraces.
Yeah, wow, very strange shapes carved into it, or like it's like I've seen some very interesting like. There's the
into it almost.
Yeah, the whole. Who has a good man? I wish I could. I've got the DVD over there somewhere. There's the Legend of the Three Worlds. I think it's Cosmogony of the Three Worlds. It's Jesus Gomara. Might be his his work, but they, you get the same effect by like pressing shapes into plasticine, like blocks, and that's almost what this looks like. It almost seems to be exactly how that was done, but it's just this remarkable piece which I can't explain it, and I think it is just a chunk of the mountain down there.
So I want to mention this this guy at applingJewelry.com. We talked about him off air in one of the earlier shows.
Oh yeah,
but
he showed the picture of, with the vibrating drill and then it getting stuck in the whole
so he has
Excalibur
this,
thing.
he uses this little tool, and it's a ultrasonic
drill
or carving tool for these really hard stones, and it just basically you put any shape metal tool at the end of this thing. It doesn't spin it; it just sends the vibration in, and he just drives it like a round tube or a star-shaped tube or a square tube. It'll just drive it right into really hard stone. Mm-hmm. And he can take out that core, or he even made some scoop marks on the side of a really hard stone that look just like the scoop marks on the side of the unfinished obelisk.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So
really.
Check out applingJewelry.com.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's got a whole article on it, right?
Yeah, he wrote an article in there. He's got a little blog on the site, and you can just see like one of the articles is about technology of the ancients or something like that.
Yeah.
And he shows all these examples of him mimicking cuts. And of course his tool is really small. It's for making jewelry, but could you
size it up?
Yeah, could you size it up and cut something like this giant megalith we're looking at here, or if this is part of the mountain?
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
I remember the video. Yeah, there must be there has to be some tool involved. Like I think there has to be some. I don't think it's carved the way we would picture primitive people doing it. This whole like chiseling away with this and hammering at it. It seems to be, and same thing in Egypt. It must be. We have the evidence for the tool in the work itself, so that tool must be. It must have existed, and so something like that. That's definitely along the lines of. I think the areas we should be thinking about and exploring for
and then
solutions
the next question, so if you accept, okay, they had some method, some tool or some methods or both that could do this, well, what is that for?
Well, so like with the jewelry maker, you drive the tool through it because not necessarily because you're wanting to leave behind the work, but that you're taking a piece that's going to be
out.
the work.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
So these could have been, hey, let's make some snake plaques for this lintel.
Nice. Yeah. So that's the conventional explanation. These are pieces that were quarried out, but it's like how? Like you can't quarry these, and we looked at that piece earlier that isn't quarried out too, and then yeah, I don't know. And you also have like little areas like this where this has clearly also been worked. These are chunks that have been taken out of the stone. They look even more weathered.
And this, by the way,
what
is a
for is like
stone. I mean, this dark charcoal gray color. It's just it would make. I mean, I imagine that polished.
Yeah. You can make beautiful marble pillars or whatever. Pillars out of that.
I agree.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You can make a giant pillow wall out of that thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there is little insets and cuts into it. Strange.
Yeah, and this stuff's everywhere. I really need to. The problem with filming and taking a billion photos is then you have to kind of try and classify it all and work it all out afterwards. But
right.
Yeah, so that's
roll through it, man. This is supposed to be easy.
So that picture we're looking at, there's terracing, like 1, 2, 3, 4 levels of terracing, and in the top level is the megalithic stuff.
Yeah,
the lower terraces are not. So I wonder if that megalithic wall keeps going down.
Right underneath, possibly.
Yeah, and somebody came along and added terrace and material alongside that wall because that wall's already holding the mountain back.
Maybe. I mean, there's actually evidence. I've seen pictures of that where the Inca would build over the top of, in some cases, the megalithic stuff, but not, they'd actually cover it up. Actually, this is the other one thing I wanted to share briefly. Is just like, so driving down from that hill, kind of this is the same valley we were looking at, and the quarry's up on the left side of this mountain. This is one of the blocks that is left on the road, and as you see, we get a bit closer. They actually had to they made this road around it because they didn't want to shift the block.
Didn't want to move the block.
But this is one of the granite blocks that belonged on the top of Ollantaytambo that's still parked here. And as I believe, there's also 1 or 2 in the river itself, like they were dropped in the river.
Yeah.
as you're driving past it. So it's just a big shaped quarried stone.
How big do you think it is?
That's
Half
we're
the height
sitting
of
in
the
a
car?
van, sitting in a van, so it's probably 4 or 5 feet high.
Yeah.
And it's probably buried.
This is a big
part of
van we're in,
Yeah.
like 10 people in the van. Yeah, and it's there's the mountains. Obviously, it's half in the sediment. It's got that weird curve to it.
Right.
We didn't stop. It was a weird day actually. We couldn't stop. There was traffic. Funny enough, nothing in front of us, but there was they couldn't get people into the main entrance to Ollantaytambo, so people were using this road. Otherwise, I wanted to stop and take a look at it. But next
They got
time,
writing on the side of it, BLD.
oh, it's a political, just political advertising that you see all over the place in Peru.
Okay.
For one, and then the archaeological teams will come along try and clean it off. But you see this on a lot of the fences, and I think it's some political group.
Okay.
Slogans and things.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I can give you. There's a couple minutes here if you want to hear it from Rogerio. I think this is in one of my videos. But so we're standing in front of the wall here. This was in 2013.
Yeah, let's
Graham and Brian. So.
We're up on another break, so let's hear it right after we come back from the break.
Okay, we'll do that, and then we'll move on to the Qorikancha. Sounds good.
That pattern is real clear behind him right there.
Yes, so he will talk about that.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Good. All right. We'll be right back.
Yep. All right, we're back for the next segment. Ben from UnchartedX and the Kyle and Russ, Brothers of the Serpent. We're going to wrap up our Ollantaytambo visit here and move on. But one thing I wanted to share with you guys before we move on, and this is something that I think is in one of my videos, but this is just a quick clip of Rogerio, this excellent guide that we had in 2013 on the Graham Hancock trip, and he's talking about kind of the Inca symbolism that gets attributed to this wall that's at Ollantaytambo. He'll talk about the shapes and how it's used, but he also at the same time acknowledges that there's a good chance that there's sort of, I guess, previous cultures and previous builders. He's very versed in the Inca, I guess, traditions of this place, but he's also open-minded and has lived here and seen a lot of mysterious, strange things that you can't just attribute to the Inca. But yeah, hopefully you guys can hear this, and I'll let this roll.
In front of this church there is really huge stones also, just throw like everywhere. So probably the Mayor Temple of the Sun was down there. And here we don't know exactly what the Incas or these people or these ancient people want to make here. So the point here is that you can see this symbol again. Yeah? Look at here. 1, 2, 3. Can you see the 3 one? So the same philosophy that the Incas used, that the 3 levels of the world. Yeah? Ukupacha, Kaipacha, Hanampacha. So the Mother Earth level or under the ground. The second level is where we are live now, the present world. The other one is celestial world, which is in the sky. So all these 3 levels was symbolized for 3 animals: snake, puma, and condor. What we represent? Pumas. We are the second level here. So that's why in the next stone you can see kind of profiles of the bodies of pumas. Just probably the Spanish, they carry the heads parts. But you can see clearly the tail part, all the body almost disappearing here. Look at the tail. Look at the body, but the head was carried. We don't know exactly who made that. But the point is that this temple, it wasn't finished. Why? Because when you go to the quarry sector, there is more stones waiting for these ancient people. We don't know exactly why they stopped this work. So most of the theories mention that probably if the Incas built that, so when the Spanish came in 15 centuries, so they have to stop this work. But probably it's more ancient. Yeah? More ancient. So the point is that just in the way, crossing the river, it was a hard work first. And close to the river, there is stones waiting for Incas or for these ancient people. And just here, one case from here, in the bottom of the valley, there is two huge stones, more bigger than this. So calculation of the weight of this is between 60 to 70 tons approximately. So it's really hard to understand also that, yeah?
Yeah.
Wow.
So there we go, rolling back what I said earlier. But yeah, there's obviously good evidence that the work here was stopped because there's stones at the quarry location and on the other side of the river and on the hillside.
Yeah, and I did like a little bit of the, what would you call it, the mythology or the worldview there of the lower, the middle, and the upper worlds. That's also a very widespread view among ancient people.
Yeah.
And I like the symbolism. The snake is the lower world. The puma is the central middle world that we inhabit, and then the condor is the sky. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. But then I have to wonder if that really is a puma.
Yeah.
In the next stone, if it is, which is possible. I don't know. Like again, I think of the Silistani. You know, you see that cat on some of those blocks in those towers, and then I mean, what in the Sulawesi Valley, right? The giant lids of those huge jars also have cats, puma-looking shapes, and then there's the pumas at the giant cats at Göbekli Tepe. I mean, I don't know.
Yep.
There's the symbol seems to permeate a lot of these ancient structures, and it's just
it does.
It's if that's what it is, they're saying, yeah, this is the middle world, and I thought it was a builder's mark. You know, because you see the similarity, but yeah, idea. I mean, if that's what it is, it's very interesting.
It is, and I don't know. You know, there's other things at the like the Silistani Towers. When we look at that side, I mean, I remember being on that trip with Graham, and it's actually in his book in Magicians. There's the photos from that trip because we found some other symbols on there, not just but there's like it almost looked like a goose in flight. It's not a condor. There's other objects and shapes on there that he found a relationship to, to some other sites, to Göbekli Tepe, I think. So I do come back to a lot of the symbology and like these shapes as being very, very I mean, eye of the beholder. You know, it's a lot of it. I think it's subjective and it's interpretation. And I think there's a good chance that it's even possible that they built their mythology around the shapes that they saw. Like the shapes may have been there first, then they interpreted and built their mythology. Like I do have this problem with this being a Chicana or an Andean cross because, you know, you have your three levels of the world, but you've got more than 3, 4, 5 steps on this shape here that what is left. And it's just not consistent. So it's always this sort of gray area of interpretation and subjectiveness to it it's hard to pin down, and I think that's how you can build symbology around it and build up a picture of the world around it, and then have it interpreted that way. And it's hard to tell how much of it's that chicken and egg thing, like what came first and how is it being interpreted. And you know, if you get told that's what you're looking at, then that's what you're looking to see. You know,
right? I also feel like that pattern, to me, makes more sense if that block was laid down long ways. Then it's like ziggurats or something, you know. And I don't know who built the wall. Like there obviously are small stones at the bottom. It's been shimmed up, you know. So possibly the Inca tried to stand up some of this stuff, but then that makes me question these long slivers that are in between them. Did they make those, or was it all lying around and they were able to do it? But that block, if it was laying on its side, then that pattern makes sense. Then you're looking at 3 pyramids, which is really interesting.
Right? Yeah, like this way. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, I don't know how much of this has been worn off and how it's had this shape, this vagueness of this shape, and obviously that doesn't seem to be original, but the rest of the face of it seems to be pretty good. It's one of those things that who knows how many people have worked on. There's a nub here, so and these shim blocks do fit exquisitely well in the wall,
right?
So it's hard for me not to think the nub's at the bottom.
Right, you're right.
It's not a lifting boss, obviously. Yeah, and I think the block next to it, the one we looked at earlier, the couch block, may well have been oriented differently somewhere else. It's just a same problem you have in some places in Egypt and whatnot. You're looking at this jumble that's either been reassembled and it's been modified, and it's really hard to tell what it may have originally been.
But there's definitely the characteristic stair steps cut into the solid rock, you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it sort of connects the styles of the, I guess, is it the Qorikancha?
Yeah, well, and those are the same terms he used for the 3 levels of the world too, which is by design. Like Jesus Gamara kind of adopted that with his terminology, which is the one that I use for the Hanan Pacha, Uran Pacha, Ikun Pacha, and that's the same, more or less, that they use for the 3 levels of the world and their symbology. Yeah, but it's great site.
They call it a temple, but is it really?
Everything's a temple.
You know, I mean, I understand that the terminology, but it's a megalithic site that was totally not finished. It looks like it was barely started.
Right.
To me.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how big how built it was. I think there was some layers to some of these structures that aren't there now. There's definitely a jumble of blocks at the bottom, so something's fallen down, and whether it was originally finished or not, I mean, it seemed that obviously the fact that there are blocks at the quarry and on route to this site indicates that it wasn't finished. But to what degree it wasn't finished, I'm not sure. And for sure, at the very start, if you remember, we were looking at blocks that are at the jumble, like all jumbled up at the bottom of the hill. So stuff has fallen down, I think, and I don't think that's all staged. Like it's all messed about, and that's consistent with some of the things we see on some of the other sites. So whether work stopped because something happened and then the damage happened, you know, I think that seems to be maybe the case, and then that was left. That maybe it was the cataclysm, and then, you know, that's what the Inca found eventually and put together as much as they could. I don't know. It's a mystery. I mean, this is just where we talked about at the start. Like this, it's such a mystery in South America when you look at this stuff.
Are there other patterns in any of these blocks besides that one? Is that the only one that has anything like that?
So the only here at Ollantaytambo, yes. So there's similar kind of shapes, at least corners. I mean, you see it at that water feature we saw earlier. But yeah, I don't see any. I don't recall seeing anything else quite like this stepped shape. You definitely have that block and that shape in other blocks. There's blocks down the bottom that have the more consistent sort of cross shape, like
yes,
like square
cross. Yeah.
Yep. And then you have the same thing at Tiwanaku. There's a much more steps like this sort of thing, but carved out of solid andesite at Tiwanaku.
Yeah, but nothing. But up here in that wall, there's no other pattern like that.
This is the only one that has that. The 3 of them on here, and then there's these other vague shapes that Rogerio says is like serpent tails and or puma heads and tails, which is.
And there is a nub.
I personally couldn't see.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So if it was laid over,
there would be 2 nubs on the bottom.
And I do like your pyramid idea. I think that's actually
I do.
cool.
3 pyramids. Come on, guy.
There's the other one at the top there. So one,
There's
2,
a big one in the front, and
3,
2 smaller ones over
yeah,
there.
right. Two. Yep. Hard to say. Yeah, it's an incredible site, and it's, again, if anyone ever goes down there and you're going to Machu Picchu, make sure you spend some time at Ollantaytambo, which is where you catch the train to get to Machu Picchu, because in many ways this site's almost more impressive. It's, I mean, Machu Picchu, don't miss it, but this site is lesser well known, but I mean, remarkable, and it's. Yeah, there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of things have been written about Ollantaytambo. I think we're talking about in the break, like some of the Inca have a play, and a lot of the name itself comes from this ancient play and this drama that they set out that was recorded and has since been translated. It's mentioned in a few of the old books about the site. So but not a lot of, you know, the tradition. It's a fortress, of course, or a temple, but. Yeah. You know, not a lot of information about it beyond that. Really, it's one of those things. It's hard to find a lot of good information about its history.
And I'd like to know about the lichen. I wonder if anybody's done any studies on that particular orange lichen there. You know, like how because some of that kind of lichen, some types of lichen take a long time to grow, especially those huge patches.
Yep.
It can be thousands of years, so I wonder if if anybody has done any studies on that.
I would like to think that they must have, and I ran into the same thing with the Gosford glyphs in Australia, because a lot of that wall has lichen on it, but it's a different type. But yeah, I learned that there's a way to date certainly the lichen, I don't know. It's something I need to look at. This is a site I still want to do a proper video on at some point. I haven't really got there yet. Hoping to get back to this site to do some filming sooner or later.
Yes.
All right. So we can keep chatting, but let me move on and just introduce the next set of footage. So we'll keep this rolling. We're going to pivot back to Cusco. From last week, we mentioned the Qorikancha, and I think I showed some of the footage of this wall on the outside. But the next 15 minutes or so of footage that I have here is from the Qorikancha, which is today it's a Catholic church in the center of Cusco, and this is the kind of the megalithic heart of Cusco, which was, I think, originally a megalithic city, and this is there's a lot of remarkable aspects to it, particularly on the inside. A lot of opportunity to see sort of the inner workings of how some of these walls were built, and also the different levels of architecture, including modern, that have been piled up on top of it. So it starts on the outside, and then we progress on the inside.
All right.
Yeah, this is one of those alleyways in Cusco, but this is the exterior wall. I think we showed this in the other swapcast, talking about Cusco and the Inca Roca walls.
Yeah, so
we
those
were
little,
looking at those weep holes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they go anywhere? Do you know? I mean, do they?
I do. There's a bit of footage, I think, where we look through them. They do go through all the way through the wall.
Okay.
And you sort of have that same thing where you have a lot of blocks still with nubs in them, vitrification on these walls.
Yeah, it looks like they polished part of the wall, but
right.
not all of it. It's weird.
Yeah, and then why
part
there's nubs
is that
on
like
some.
an artifact of the video, or is the upper part of the wall, maybe from 4 courses up, looks shiny?
No, that's how you tell. Some of them is shiny. In fact, you shine a light, you can see there's a lot of good cases in alleyways where you've got megalithic work and then non-megalithic work, and you'll see one wall shiny, one wall isn't. And that's the vitrification. It's a good example. Like the other side is Inca work or later work versus this side. And just, these insanely tight, non-regular joins,
Can you pause that and back it up like 3 or 4 seconds before you started looking closely at the wall and you were still kind of looking?
This bit here, down the alleyway. Oh, I might have lost you guys. I did lose you guys. Is that me or you?
I'm still on.
Yep. Okay. Hey, Brett. Yeah, they dropped out.
So I had a bunch of stuff in the chat window. So lichen, Christos lichen actually grows at 0.5 millimeter per year.
You guys back?
So if you've got 1 meter in diameter, that would be 2,000 years worth of lichen growth.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Nice. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. We just cut out there.
Yeah, you're back. I'm not looking. I don't have the chat window open. I should probably open it up. That's interesting. 1 millimeter a year for that type of lichen.
Yeah, he's got 2 different types up there. One of them is 2 to 5 millimeters per year. Another one is 0.5 millimeter per year. So
wow.
But yeah, there's a bunch of different types. So you can, once you find out what type it is, you can find out what the growth rate is, and you have to check the climate and the moisture level and sunlight and stuff. But yeah, so that's exactly the spot I wanted to look at when I asked you to back it up. There seems to be a line that crosses multiple blocks there. I don't know if that's...
Which line are we talking? I'm looking...
Is that what it is? Like it's the middle course?
Oh, this here?
Yeah.
This marking?
That line goes... Yeah, that mark, what is that?
I don't know. Maybe it's...
And it goes across at least 2 or 3 blocks there.
Like a discoloration almost, yeah.
Yeah.
So it is possible that this was plastered over, that they may have been building on top of this. Certainly on the inside of the Qorikancha, all of the walls that are now uncovered have been were plastered over, and then later had to be hammered off. And you have actually some of the tool marks are actually from that removal process from the plaster. And whether that's something like that, or perhaps this is simply wear and tear from people walking down here for however many years, rubbing their ass on the wall.
God,
I don't know.
When we were passing it earlier, I thought it looked like it has a shadow underneath it, but it may just be.
It is, and it does extend all the way down here too. You're right.
Yeah,
there's
but
definitely
there's
discoloration. I mean,
Yeah.
there could have been sediment in here. This might be a sediment layer. This might have been where the dirt was at some point. Like,
Right.
and you saw, because you do see something similar here. Like, this might have been.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's almost as if maybe there was just dirt here, and then I'm sure this floor is probably relatively modern.
Yep.
In fact, that's probably my best guess, is that this was sediment covering all of this, and then this was once this was cleared out, it was then that's the stain that was left.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Let me skip this forward a bit, because I did want to pause here real briefly. You see this a lot, like this type of the joinery is so fine. Like, it blows my mind. Like, it looks straight to the eye, but so many of these curves and joints aren't straight, and that just seems to make it even more complex in terms of making all these matching surfaces and fitting everything together.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's just from my perspective, but yeah.
Yeah, it's
the
like
little details.
It's giving the impression of being straight, but they're actually not,
They're
which
not.
makes it way harder. Yeah.
But you go inside, and there's definitely there are areas where there is straight work. This isn't one of them. This is very. It's almost like you're increasing the level of degree of difficulty for, I don't know what reason.
Right. Yeah. For what reason?
It's everywhere, like little lip, and
Oh, yeah.
and if anything, like this is what leads me to this stone softening just in my head. Like, it seems to me like this had to have been softened somehow to do this.
Yeah.
There you go. There's one of these holes.
Unless
that goes all the way through.
Yeah, unless they somehow got the
Shamir.
entire construction ringing, and they cut their own perfect flat surfaces
there you
against
go.
each other. Because one of the ways, like we learned in looking into precision, how to get flat surfaces on stone.
Like lapping, just rubbing them together. Yeah.
You have to have 3 stones, and you rub 2 of the surfaces together, and then you rub the other 2, and then you take those 2 and rub them together, and you keep doing that over and over, and eventually you will end up with perfectly flat surfaces.
Right.
But if you just rub 2 surfaces together, they will conform to each other, but they won't be perfectly flat. Like, they could be curved.
Right.
A little.
Okay.
So it's almost like they set the stones down and then got it.
The whole thing.
Got the whole thing vibrating.
And they just
let it.
They just made perfect.
Maybe.
What do you call it? Mating surfaces.
There you go. Yeah, mating. And that's actually that leads a lot more credence to the resonance and function. And I tell you what, Russ, that's a great observation on that discoloration on that wall. Because I've just noticed that myself for the first. Now I'm looking at it. I saw it. The whole length of this wall has been. Yeah. I suspect that's what it was. Is probably no. I don't want to buy the painting. Thanks. Good good example of reused blocks here, right? So old megalithic blocks plopped into the wall. Rebuilt.
And look at even the Inca stonework there. Not the megalithic stuff, but that is just beautiful.
That's great work.
The way
cobble
they
work.
This
it's amazing. I mean, we've tried to build walls. We have built walls out of the natural stone here.
Yeah.
And
what a job.
to do what they
This
did
is
there,
impressive.
I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, Brian would call this very like fine Inca work. Like, this was stuff they really put an effort into. And there's some mud mortar here and there, but there's a lot of stuff that's actually pretty damn well joined. Like really well
this upper
done.
wall there is-
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Yeah, that's what people don't realize. There's such, and if you ever want to do it, I tried this. I'm doing the same thing. I've kind of half built like a wall. I'm trying to build a gate, and same thing. Like, it's so difficult. Like, there's such a degree of difficulty with this stuff. And I'll just skip back real quick because I wanted to point something out here as well. As
That
you peel
wall
around,
there,
like all these walls on the outside, and we kind of turn the corner, and you can see a lot of these walls and these buildings, the basements and their foundations are all built from this megalithic stone.
Yeah.
And then the Qorikancha itself has these are the blocks from like Sacsayhuaman that would come down and they were reused and then put in place with mortar by the Spanish and then by the colonial era, and then you can see how it's all been reused. And same here, like this is all reused stone that's then been cemented in by later eras, and you've got this sort of colonial Spanish and then modern on top. It's this real mix of styles in the one building. And the funny thing is, so we're inside the Qorikancha now, and everyone comes in here to see kind of the Christian artwork and the paintings. It's a famous church, Less people come here to see the megalithic stuff. And again, this marking, so all of this stuff on the inside that's now all covered over was all plastered over by the Spanish. So they covered all of this up, and they just made it, they all like solid plaster, and they drew artwork on it. They put Christian stuff on it, and then later on the Peruvians hammered it all off and exposed it all again. But that's what you see with these marks. And you guys were talking about the trapezoidal windows, and that some of them aren't windows, they're alcoves, but some of them are windows. This is where you see a lot of this stuff. Some of them line up through various sets of walls, which we'll see here. Yep, spinning around. You have to, again, this is one of my early trips with this camera, so bear with me on some of the crazy footage, but you'll get the idea.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so the windows...
God, that's awesome.
Man. Good little shot. I use that. I should have stayed there longer. I do use it occasionally. And you same thing with the blocks going around the corner at the top there.
Yep.
You'd have to be crazy to plaster over all this. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, it's that what did Hugh Newman say was the he called it, he had a great term for it. It was the idea that the Western man and that it was the divine, like we were superior, so they would cover up sort of any evidence of sophistication from previous cultures. I think a lot of that went on here.
Anybody showing up claiming to be superior is obviously faking.
Yeah.
God,
look at that. What was that for? I mean, what's I guess lights. Those little alcoves.
It's beautiful work, and this is some of the finest work.
Sconces, yeah.
And this is that wall we looked at.
The block up in the corner. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the block up in the corner there with all the holes and the weird. You just passed it.
Okay.
You gotta go back.
Upper left, yeah. Got to back up.
Oh,
this.
this. Wait for it. You're going to see some crazy stuff in here from that. Wait for it. There's a lot more like that. We'll get to a section where it's almost like an ancient circuit board. It almost looks like circuitry. There's another example of it.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of that type of thing.
That's like a way of joining, or I don't know.
I don't know.
Some of that looks rebuilt.
Yep.
And
they have some odd.
That block has bothered me for a long time. I've seen pictures of that thing. What the hell is that?
Yeah,
It definitely looks like there's another piece that is meant to mate to it, right?
Something.
Yeah, what is that?
There's a circular hole here, like a tubular drill. There's a couple of other examples of circular holes in many of these. I think at this point we just skip over the ropes and wait for the whistles.
Yeah, those are parts.
Yeah,
machine parts.
Those are tractor weights.
Yeah, they do look like tractor weights. You just hang that on the
tractor weights are pretty much anything that's heavy that you can throw on that plow.
Yeah.
Yep.
That is so strange. What does that say? No, don't sit on this?
Yeah, no centaurs. No toca, no centaurs. I like the R's, like centaurs.
Yeah.
It's like, no sitting, no touching.
Yeah.
As people look at them and go, this must be a convenient seat, which happens. Right. I mean, same thing in the Egyptian Museum. Some of the big vases, they had to put like perspex covers over the top of them because back in the day when you could smoke and people would put this like, oh, that's an ashtray, and they'd throw.
Oh man, wow.
Throw their smokes in the ashtray. Like, no, that's not an ashtray. That's a priceless artifact. But okay.
All that sand outside, and you want to throw it down in the vase.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that stops them from throwing them down in the sand either. If you look at any of the other sites, like this modern Egypt's contribution to a lot of these sites is the amounts of trash that are in them. But it's more than Western world than anything else.
Yeah.
They just have a trash management problem.
Yeah. So what could that have been for?
Right.
I mean, it looks like a vault door, right?
Yeah,
it does. It looks like a safe door or a vault door. Yeah.
So some of them, we'll get to some of those that are in place still. Now this is This is in the courtyard in the center of the Qorikancha. Now this is speculated to be the entrance to a tunnel system. This is a well. It's obviously a megalithic block. That this is the tunnel system that supposedly connects to the top of Sacsayhuaman. There's also all these rumors in this area of tunnels going down that have been covered up by the church. So there's a few news stories here and there and some pictures you can see of underneath floor tiles where they found staircases that go down, and very hard to find any real information on it. But yeah, I think this
that really is a well there in the middle. Like,
yeah, it's well, I don't know if it's a well. It's a block. It doesn't. There's a bottom to the block, but it's sitting on top of something that nobody really knows what's there. I mean, I've just heard rumors. So, and this is interesting too. This channeled block is one that we see very much like a lot of the stuff in Egypt, where this reminds me of all the white calcite, the crystal blocks in Egypt in the ground with the channeled blocks.
Well, and that square one with the square hole through it.
Yep.
That's like the hardest possible way to make that.
Yes.
You could just get 4 bricks and stick them together instead of cutting a hole all the way through a square block.
Right, this one here, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yes, this is a collection of parts.
Pieces and parts that some machine.
And we'll get. Let me look at the. You guys can't see this bit, but I'm just looking ahead.
Okay, those parts right there. Those look like the. I can't tell if they are, but are those the key locking cuts on that block?
Keystone cuts.
Yes,
keystone cuts.
Yep. Yeah, there are keystone cuts here. We see those at Ollantaytambo also, and I think probably if we look through that footage, they were also at Ollantaytambo.
Okay,
so this is kind of looking at the back of the Qorikancha. Again, very much reconstructed from leftover blocks, and people have put them in patterns. And this whole courtyard was likely all megalithic at one point. This is all rebuilt, all modern, and just constructed. And this is the wall, some of the internal structure. You can see kind of the layout of the place. They built the rest of the church kind of around and inside a lot of the megalithic foundations.
Yeah.
Yeah, more nubs.
Yep.
It's
amazing that the Spanish didn't try to knock those off there if they were plastering that wall. Why wouldn't they have?
It's probably hard work. I mean, they did destroy a lot of it. In fact, we'll see some evidence for that in a minute here. And it's one of my favorite little bits. There's a couple of things to note when we get around here. Some of the complexity of some of the larger blocks, because there's a section of this at the back that's much bigger than this in terms of the block size. And I think this might be it here. So what as we go around, one thing I want you to look at is the horizontal join line here. I think this is it. Okay. And it's this one block that is multi-dimensional. It's like it goes around the corner all the way around without any vertical join. So this is one huge block that has been shaped to fit everything around it. So I think I start with this line and I kind of follow this one line around with no vertical joins. So there's no, it's not made of multiple blocks. This is all one single block, the thing on top.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just keeps going around.
Wow.
And around on the inside, and then turns that corner and then goes up. And that's the... Wow. So it's this one giant block. And this is another interesting point here. Again, you can see all these little chisel marks from hammering off the plaster, but this broken surface that you see on the left is where the Spanish were destroying part of this because they thought there was treasure or gold embedded in it or something like this. And what I like about this is it gives you an indication of just how fine the join was between the stones on the inside. So it's kind of, you can see like this one horizontal line that goes through here is part of this join. I think this is the clip here, yeah. Actually, no, we'll get to that. We will get to that as well. But actually, this is another area with that circuitry-like blocks that are in the Qorikancha.
That definitely looks like it used to be a vault door. I mean,
vault door, yep, probably for doors. Yep.
Got the hinges went up there or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it could have been two doors, like a double door hinge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the broken section.
Yeah.
They
were chiseling it, trying to break through it or something.
They busted it up. I think they were looking for treasure. They blew it apart, but you can see how well fit the stones were together all the way through
across,
the depth of the stone. Yeah, so there wasn't any real imperfection in it.
Yeah, so which puts pay to the argument of like, oh well, they just made the outside look.
They
good
just
and-
faced them, right? Yeah, no, they clearly didn't.
Nope.
So yeah, here's
But yeah,
this
that
very
definitely
strange
looks
one.
like vault doors to me. Like if the Spanish were breaking that stuff, trying to find gold, well, that's where you put it.
Right.
I don't know.
But I don't know what the hell this is. Like this is, if those were
Yeah.
doors, like I don't know what all this stuff is for, because this is like there's something inset in this clearly.
Right.
Whether it was
It's
metal.
almost like if you ever take apart a block of a carburetor,
Mm-hmm.
have all these channels cut into it and holes drilled through it, and when the thing is put together, there's pathways that complete that
Right.
water goes through, or not
Yeah,
water, but fuel.
Yeah.
Or even cooling in the blocks, right? Same thing. It's
exactly.
the cooling channels. Seems like that, right? It seems functional. It must have been
Yeah.
part of some machine. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
I
what.
mean, but one of the things I've wondered about is how much of this is associated with metallurgy.
Right.
I don't know. But yeah, you could mount something in there, I guess. All those, but it's just so strange.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I
that-
like the idea of a vault door.
Yeah.
This is kind of like shades of Pumapunku and Tiwanaku to me as well in some of these shapes.
Yep.
And then the consistent alcoves, and then they've left a piece of the plaster here so you can see what the Spanish did, so that they plastered over everything and drew artwork on it. They just used it as a canvas.
Yeah.
They covered up the art to
Yeah. It's hard to paint on that,
yeah,
especially
right.
paintings. Yeah.
Yeah.
God, that's freaking beautiful. Yeah. Good grief. So, do you think it used to be taller than that? Was it roofed?
I think it was. Yes, yeah, I do. And that's all seems to be mostly gone now.
Yeah. Okay.
But and then they built the rest of the structure around it, but it does seem like it was roofed.
And I noticed what you're talking about. A lot of those blocks go around the corner, and it's every other one, right? The block from the left goes around the corner, and then the block from the right goes around the corner.
Yep. So no fault lines, no.
Right. Yeah.
Again, if the structure's vibrating or meant to deal with some sort of resonance, then it's going to hold together.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could almost imagine like, a power plant scenario where there's these huge rods that go from
Yeah.
one window to the other, and
Yeah.
there's some
Yeah,
weird freaking grid of something in there. I don't know. Or it's
Right.
just like, let me have safety deposit box A.
Yeah.
Yeah, could have been. It was just easy. I really don't. It's hard to fathom why, but and this shape too. Like, so this is I love this trapezoidal window shape, because this is something that the Inca then replicated often like in other sites. There's so many examples of them recognizing that was a significant shape, and then they would replicate it. And this is kind of the inside of. This is a rare curving wall that you do get in a few different places in Peru. And this is one that curves. This has all sorts of strange protrusions and it's obviously
And
this
it's like second floor. You're
yeah.
up-
So
you're-
we're up here. Yep, upstairs, outside.
Yeah.
Same elevation as the other work that we were just seeing, but it's up off the street. There's a picture that I showed in the other swapcast of the outside wall, the curving wall. This is on the inside of that.
Okay. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
God, look at
Yeah.
those
That is
nubs.
strange.
Right, and these are definitely shaped nubs too. Now we're not just the round, sort of irregular ones. These are very regular.
Yeah, I wonder if they were all like that originally. I don't know.
That one's been shaved off. Look at that. Yeah. Wow.
And damage. So whether
Yep.
this was Spanish or other, somebody's attacked it with, or something's happened to it.
Yeah, see, that looked like one of those trapezoidal window type alcoves that
Yep.
you just passed. It would have been a
Just
big
the
one.
bottom part of it. Yeah.
It's the usual baffling array of complex shapes.
Yep.
Yeah, we don't build
And
like this.
it does look like some of these had nubs or even bars that go across the whole thing, but they've been almost completely removed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows? I really
Yeah.
the original shape and structure of these places is a real mystery. It's hard to you have to remember that when you look at these sites. Like, that's a real strange shape in there too. Like, that's
Yeah, that is
Yes.
a weird one.
cornice. almost. But it's just so jumbled up now. You have to remember that we just don't know. It's very hard to reconstruct it correctly. And then all the pieces we didn't know where they fit, we stuck them out here in the garden.
Right. Wouldn't it be great if there was a, Göbekli Tepe style one of these intentionally buried by the builders?
Yeah.
That we could find, so when we can slowly uncover it and the whole thing is intact.
Yes.
Yeah, and you can carbon date the burial.
Yeah.
Or at least a new library, or not a new library, but a discovery of a library that no one knew about.
Yeah.
A hidden one would have been. Maybe it will happen in our lifetimes. That would
maybe.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We still haven't explored everything yet.
This is true. I think there's still a lot we can discover, but
yeah.
Yeah, I wonder about the sites like Pumapunku, where all the blocks are scattered about and they're half buried and they've kind of uncovered them and dug down in the sediment. Like, has anybody really dug deep into that site to the bedrock, or looked for under subterranean chambers?
I remember reading that they thought they found burials or something there.
Oh yeah, there's some ground. Yeah. There's been some ground penetrating radar that indicates the site's much larger and there is underground structures there. In fact, I did a podcast also recently with Brian Forrester and Jimmy from Bright Insight, and that's something that I will be releasing here pretty soon. It's after the Hugh Newman one, and I need to get out. And then he talked about that there has been some work done there, that they've sort of confirmed that there are underground structures. But as far as we know, no one's really dug it up. That there's just something's. I've also heard the other side of that, which is the anecdotal, I guess, indigenous rumors of that stuff from people that live on that site. Like, one of our guides in Bolivia has a house that's literally across the fence from the backside of Tiwanaku, and you look at her. She's got this guest house that's shaped like a Chicana Inca cross. Beautiful place. It holds like 7 or 8, 10 people. And then you can literally look out and see like the sun gate, and it's right there. But she's lived there her whole life, and tells you the story of people that they know that there was like these staircases going down at Tiwanaku beneath the Akapana or the pyramid, and they've since been covered up. So I mean, you take that with the grain of salt that you got to take all this stuff with. But we've now got some confirmation that Brian was telling me that they have found evidence for that, but no one's excavated it yet, and I suspect there's a lot more to find at that site in particular, and that'd be a good subject for one of these in the future too, because I've got a ton of footage I've been there a bunch. It's spent like 4 or 5 days at Tiwanaku and Pumapunku. Wonderful site.
We should do one, and we should take a break.
All right, one more segment after that, and we'll get to the Temple of the Moon.
Yep. And we are back, Uncharted Snakes Swapcast, and this is the final segment, and we are going to get to look at some of the interesting stuff of the Temple of the Moon. And,
yes.
So what is this we're looking at here? I see it's roped off, or
it is
barbed wired
off. Yeah. It's kind of at the so Temple of the Moon. First of all, is one of those sites around Cusco. So it's also one of these sites that isn't included in the overall sort of, the Puma and the Puma head is Sacsayhuaman and Cusco's the body. There's many other sites around Cusco that are megalithic that aren't part of that motif, and this is one of them. In fact, if you go up in the hills around Cusco, this stuff's everywhere. And this is one of the areas, and this is kind of where the bus parks, and you walk past these two little stones here, and it's a good example of some of the real ancient-looking Hanan Pacha, almost as if the stone was flowing at some point or something, or it just looks tremendously eroded and worked. And this is on the approach to where you then walk over to the Temple of the Moon, which we'll get to. But this is just, again, some really mysterious stonework that's happened here. These steps that are all then super heavily eroded.
Yeah.
And that's just bedrock jutting up there?
I think so, yeah. It's similar to the hill behind.
That looks like limestone.
Yeah, may well be.
That looks. We have rock here that looks just like that.
Yeah.
The porous nature, and then there's got the erosion in it. Yeah.
And I was pointing out before we started that the one in the back there, the one that's got what looks like a chair, seems like it broke off. That square
something
was
snapped off
taller.
Yeah. So that rock that we're walking towards, that's the Temple of the Moon over there, and then we sort of skip forward a bit. This is a sprawling area, and then you have a ton of that type of stuff here, and then these caves that are inside. Again, really short clips, and I think this is actually up on top, above the caves, and just all.
There's a cave under here, and it actually connects
I'll
up
just
with
mute that because
this is
this is standing up on top of. There's all these caves beneath us. We're on top of the Temple of the Moon area, but yeah, all of this is the bedrock, and it's just seems to be a lot of work stone, and it's cut and just very ancient looking. And this is also all these hills in the background. You know, same thing. You see this in a lot of places. It was whatever.
So is this limestone?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see the what looks like the layering right there in the rock, and then of course the
sedimentary nature. Yeah.
Yeah. Looks familiar. There's like Russ said, there's a lot of formations around here that look like that, without the giant stair stepping cut into.
Yeah, without the big cuts.
Without somebody obviously having done something to it.
Yeah, somebody waving a shamir around.
Yeah, just wafting it around.
That's right.
Having fun. Yeah, that is something that I need to do a lot more research into, the whole shamir.
Yeah, all the legends of stone cutting tools are fascinating, but the shamir is a good one.
Yeah, and there's an interesting one that's because most of the legends are concerned with, the Jewish tradition, the legends of the Jews and such. But then there is a very similar one that is South American, and it has the same sort of symbolism involved. It's a bird is involved, and there's if there's a hole cut into the rock or something, and the bird nests in there, and then if you cover it with a hard stone or mud or brick or whatever, the bird will go and can't get to its young. The bird will go and fetch some plant, leaves of some plant, and then bring it back and rub it on the stone and break through the stone somehow.
It's like a red paste or something. Is that what it was?
It's like red flowering plant or something.
Right.
And I think who was the guy that the researcher that went down there that was studying all this stuff?
What, the surveyor guy? How about?
Yeah, and he talked about an amphora or something that was full of some liquid that when they found it, and it.
Yeah, he was looking for the lost city of Z.
Yeah,
you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking of Petrie, but that's not
Petrie.
Petrie.
I know. I was doing the same thing.
No, it was the British. There's a movie.
The surveyor.
About it, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, the amphora breaks. Yeah, Percy Fawcett.
Percy Fawcett. Yeah.
The amphora breaks or something, and the liquid came out, and it just turned the stone that the floor into soft stone, the soft clay, basically.
Yeah.
There's that account, and then I guess he was the one that wrote about the legend that the locals talked about with the bird fetching something, and of course the plant has never been found or
identified.
So this is all rock cut. All of this is just cut out of the stone from the mountaintop.
Yeah.
Wow.
It looks like on top of the caves.
It looks like the bottom of a building, right?
Right.
Like it be taller, and all of the higher stuff is gone. It's broken off. But I mean, I don't know if it was a building. There's weird patterns on the floor, the ground there, but those square cuts down into the rock on the side there, the outside edges are all rough. Like it used to extend higher, but it's been broken off. I don't know.
Yeah, it's again. I don't know.
Zero answers.
Somebody's done something to the stone for some reason at some point, and we don't know why or how. And it was obvious, and it appears super ancient.
Yeah,
and in fact, they normally don't let you down into these caves. But the first time I was here with Brian and Graham, I remember Graham's wife Santha just hopped over the ropes, and then the whole group sort of went over and they tried to blow the whistles, and we just because the sheer weight of numbers, we were like, all right, they just gave up and let us into the cave. So I do have some photos and some footage from inside the caves, which we're on top of here, that we'll get to. But yeah, you just.
I'd like to point out there where you're showing this, it's sort of a square cut out of the rock. That you could imagine, okay, they were quarrying rock here.
Yep.
Except that at the edge, they left the stone there, which once again, you have the problem of the back of the stone. They have to cut into the back to leave that one narrow edge of wood is only 4 to 6 inches wide.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense as a quarry to do that type of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of practical sort of issues with the quarrying idea. In a lot of places, there's some spots we can go, okay, maybe they pulled a piece of stone out here, but there's so many other examples where it's pretty clearly not quarried that it's hard to really fathom what the purpose was.
And also, none of that rock looks very good for building materials. So it's got so many cuts and cracks, and it's very porous, and you can tell it's low quality. Like a quarry. The great thing about a quarry is it gives you a chance to really dig down into the mountain and get to the good stone.
The good stuff, yep.
As this stuff that's up on the surface like this is not high quality, so
no,
you wouldn't be quarrying those right off the edge there. You would cut way into that and get into the stuff that has less cracks, less porous. That's so strange. They were just chopping up the exterior surface here into these strange shapes.
Yeah.
I mean, that is... I don't even know what to make of that. That particular feature,
boat
right here,
right? But it looks like that actually looks like concrete.
It does.
Very
I
old.
was just thinking the same thing. Looks like concrete. Yeah. But it's the same stone as the rest of the hillside.
As the rest of the mountain. Yeah.
It is the stone.
Whole mountain's concrete.
Yeah. Maybe the whole thing's been like. And now, now we're building whole mountains out of concrete.
Mystery solved.
It is concrete.
Yeah. So this is the cave you're talking about?
This is the back entrance to into it. And there's actually the more famous cave is in the front. That has there's shaped surfaces in here, and these walls have been worked. But this is at the front side. This is at the back where I was sneaking past the. You're not supposed to go in here. Sneaking past the guards, but I've got some pictures of the other cave at the front. When it has like this big snake motif on the side of the wall. It's also in Hancock's book. The pictures, I think, from this trip, or from the 2013 trip. Some people say it's a sperm, or it's a snake, or something on the side of the wall in the main cave.
Oh, is it one of those weird snakes with the very large heads?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's some of those at Göbekli Tepe as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get to that at the end here, where I've got some pictures. From the first trip.
Yeah, that's very familiar looking stone.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean it looks like what we have here, very sort of a strange crystalline limestone, but I don't know. It could be something else. It's not. I don't see any layering really, but don't know.
Yeah, and then this splits through. There's a bunch of different caves here.
It looks like somebody cut that right flat on the right there. Like it used to be a crack entrance, but they made it. They widened it
wider. Yep.
Yep. Wow.
Yeah, and that cave basically goes clean through
all the way through.
Through. Yep. And then there's on the other side, the main caves are kind of on the other side, which we couldn't get to on this trip for video. But like I said, I've got some pictures. I don't know what else we have here. It's very mysterious, and this is similar to, there's another site near here that's Kenko, which is very much like this, which we can look at as well. Has these big flat work surfaces. You can walk through them. Very much Hun and Pacha again, so you're lacking kind of the megalithic blocks here. The individual blocks. I think this is the same bit of footage. Yeah, it is. Let me flip forward here. It's actually really funny. I was here at one point, and this trail, the first trip, it was just a good story. I remember these. We were sort of looking at this in awe, and all of a sudden, these couple of like guys on mountain bikes just come whizzing through here, like using the site and kind of running over with a mountain bike. That's just. I just thought it was cool that the people are still using it, even if it, just they're riding mountain bikes through here or whatever. But I was just, that's kind of cool. And then so again, more of the same, right? There's lots of these stepped shapes.
Yeah, look at that.
And this is on the front side now, again, I believe. And then you have all the Inca, what probably were dwellings and more established structures next to it at some point.
Yeah, and so has anybody checked to see if those stones for those dwellings are from that outcrop that was been cut up?
Not sure.
Not sure. Yeah.
Not sure. I suspect that's local stone, so it's probably the local either andesite or limestone from this area. And then this site just extends out further and further. There's much more of this. Like, it's all, again, worked surfaces, and there's some circular depressions in here. There's just lots of what they call these Inca thrones, which are those typical step-sided cuts. And it's all jumbled up.
Yeah, that. I'd like to know if these are, you'd have to. This would be probably hard work, but I'd like to know if these are attached to the mountain, or if a lot of these are big boulders, or if they're broken away. But yeah, up there was some blocks. Those were very square.
Yep. There were a couple blocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, very mysterious site. There's another Zone X is another one that's up here next to Kenko. That's not even, I think, even an acknowledged archaeological site. I mean, it's not just a regular, but it's an area that the locals call Zone X, which is more of this. And there's some actually deeper caves that go in there that maybe have led to original tunnels, or these might have been entrances to other areas. Who knows? It's it's one of those things.
It seems like, it seems to me like there's just, if this stuff is like lying around the surface, there's got to be, there's more underground, more that has to be found. Secrets everywhere.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, so now that's really interesting how the Inca throne here, this stair step looking chair cut into the rock, is directly across from this flattened wall.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like I don't know. I mean, if you imagine somebody sitting there, they're looking at a giant flat wall of stone.
Yeah.
The other thing I wonder is, we talking about
they were watching Sacrifice Ball.
They had their flat screen right there.
Maybe, yeah. That's where they hang. They hung the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're watching Sacrifice Ball.
Sacrifice Ball. The towers. The courtyards. Yeah. Yeah, I've been there to Cancun and all the Yucatan area where they have the courts and everything where they played all those games.
Yeah.
There's another, this isn't quarried, right? This is a cutout block. That's, again, you can't get that.
I wonder if this is like this is the machine staging area. They just came to this outcrop and cut all these shapes to mount machines onto them to do whatever operation they were doing, and then they took all the machinery and left.
Possibly. Yeah, it does seem like there's a lot of, it's like stuff fit into some of these areas. Then you have weird stuff like this.
Right.
And there's other areas where you have channels, like clearly used for liquid or something that flowed down hillsides and...
Yep. They're melting the rock and pouring it down the channels and collecting it at the bottom and then building Sacsayhuaman.
Maybe.
I got it, guys. I got it.
There it is. It's solved. Mystery solved.
But yeah, that is a really interesting...
Mm-hmm.
It looks like a little sink.
Yeah, little basin, little bird bath.
Reminds me of
just
the
for fun.
They call those where they use
A boat stone or
boat stone.
A mortar.
Yep.
All right. Yep.
But it has a flat bottom. But yeah, where they would grind stuff. But it's strange in context of all this other stuff here, all these other cutouts.
Yeah, and it seems random.
Yes, whimsical.
Right. Yeah, some.
There's two scoop marks right there.
There's a channel.
Is that a part of a channel? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, channels and...
Yep.
You definitely it's melted. There's just... And there's a section of this site that flows down the hill. I don't know if it's the footage is in this clip or it's something we can look at some point.
All right.
But there's...
Go back right there and pause it real quick for a second. Just to cut back.
To the channel.
Yeah, right there, or a little bit more. water clearly flowed off that. You can see it.
Here. Yeah.
Yeah. And yet it's what, like a foot and a half long? So there's missing pieces.
Yes. Yeah, this is discolored.
How would the water flow off that channel?
Right.
Without the the source behind it.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
So something is missing, or that rock is cracked since it used to be, I don't know.
Part of the original.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, you're right. Definitely discolored.
Yeah.
Yeah, something happened. Like it's just.
Yeah.
And this didn't happen between, the time the Inca civilization. Like this is.
Right.
This stuff hasn't moved.
This didn't happen in the 1400s or something.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, everywhere you look in these places, it's just baffling.
Yeah. I wonder if the stone didn't used to be that damaged.
Yeah, like if it was an uplift or something.
Yeah, right. And same thing, Sacsayhuaman, the big blocks that they've been moved, big chunks have fallen off and rolled around, and
yep,
this has all been disrupted. And it's just, I just got to say that it's the same thing at Kenko, many other places, and then it was recognized as significant by the Inca. That's why they typically build around it. Or they would preserve it. And you can just wander in these areas for hours and keep finding little spots like this.
Yeah, it's... I don't know.
Let me see what else we got here.
I'm still imagining that we're looking at the bottoms of... just the bottom part of something that was much higher, much taller.
Yeah.
It's all broken off somehow, sheared off. I mean, and then the rock is damaged, but that rock looks pretty good right there.
Right.
Part of that.
Yeah, and it's the erosion that even on these surfaces that seem to have been worked, I don't have any other explanation for it, than worked, and then erosion. And there's a significant erosion, at least to my eye.
Yeah, it's
acid rain with a pH of 1.
There you go. Yeah, that'll do it.
Yep.
Enough time.
Especially to the limestone.
I wonder what it would look like if you could clear out all that grass and soil that's caught up in all that stuff.
Right. Yeah, see some more of these very odd channels.
See that? Some of that looks like fossils, maybe.
Yeah, that might be natural. I don't know. It's hard to tell with the video, but that that's a snake or something. Yeah,
There's another
see
snake.
It.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I can see the channel there. All right.
All right. Let me share some of these pictures from the first trip. There's Graham and Jesus Gamara and Brian Forrester. So this is the front entrance to the Temple of the Moon. This is the main entrance, and we sort of hopped over and went in. So this is entering into the cave, and this here on the left is what they would call this snake that's on here. And I've got a couple better shots from the outside of it that show it, and a couple blurry shots from the inside. Unfortunately, it was just the lighting didn't work out. I didn't take great pictures, but this is what they call this an altar, a sacrificial altar, of course. But it's a flat worked piece of stone that's in here. There's also a number of these other shapes in here. The sun does come in through the top certain times of day.
Why is it called the Temple of the Moon?
I don't know. Maybe the moon shines into this cavity at some point would be my guess. But that's the name it had. I'm not sure why.
Okay.
You can kind of see the vitrification in here, although this may just be from people touching it constantly.
Oh, right, yeah.
So inside you have these kind of regular corners and cutout shapes and polished stone, which, again, maybe just from wear and tear. Same again, these no back cut blocks and just these shapes that have been carved out of the stone on the outside.
That's a post in front of it there?
Yeah, it's a post, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys, I know you're getting the low res version right now. So yeah, here's the. We'll see.
I was like, what is that strange formation?
What is that?
I see the
odd piece of wood. Yes,
I do see
that's your serpent.
Yeah, you're right.
With the big head. Yep. There's a better image. Yeah. This is, I know Graham has pictures of this in his book.
What do you think it's a serpent?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly what it gets interpreted as. Yeah, I mean, it's the closest thing to it: serpent, sperm, something. I mean,
do you think
whether it's symbolic,
Yeah.
it could be something else. Yeah, it could have been functional.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Obviously, the Shamir worm.
Yeah, it's the Shamir worm.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Yep.
That
this
little-
thing.
That's another one of those spots where you're like, how did they get the back?
The back, yep. If it's a quarry, how did they cut the piece of
Yeah.
stone out? How do you release it? And then, this is that same concrete thing we were
Right.
talking about earlier, but it's
Stair step thing.
right. This is a bit wider picture of that whole back side of the cave. So the rest of this other serpent, the snake caves on the other side of this hill. This is the back side. Yeah,
It
same
almost
thing.
looks like that whole hillside was cut flat first.
Right. Almost.
I mean,
it
yeah,
seems pretty
almost.
consistent, like a consistent slope, at least from this angle.
Consistent. Yeah.
A long time ago.
No. Yes, a very, very long time ago.
All right. There you go.
Man,
I'm at the end.
Fantastic, buddy.
fantastic stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Interesting
so,
site.
You got any answers?
Yeah. What's your conclusion,
Yeah,
Kyle?
the answer is Shamir.
Show me.
And I don't know. I
Yeah.
have no idea, but it's so. One thing I love about this whole area is the utter beauty of these of the stonework, the workmanship,
Yeah.
it's just incredible.
Yeah.
You know, I mean yes, obviously there's, and of course I've never been to any of these sites, but looking at the pictures of the stuff in Egypt, it's also beautiful. It's amazing. But I don't know. There's something about that just very pillowy
Right.
stonework in the walls, and I don't
Yeah, I
know.
think
It's just
Ben calls it cellular.
yeah.
It's very organic.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's something. It's just incredible, and I wish that we could build stuff like that today because it's amazing. It's
Yeah.
just
We
something-
we don't do it that way anymore.
No,
So
I'd love to try.
but there's
you
something
know?
inspiring about it. It's just so,
Yeah.
so awesome.
yeah, you feel that. I mean, when you see it, that's when you have some appreciation for what it must have taken to do it like that. And it's one of those things too. It's not like you make it up as you go along. There's must have been some plan behind it, and that's the baffling part, really. Like, what was the plan? What was the idea? What was the function? What was the reason, if not function? But yeah, I don't. It just makes me want to go back down there again, which hopefully I'll get the chance to do pretty soon. But
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's
good-
and you're
good
right.
place to visit.
There is when you're kind of looking at it, it looks like there isn't a plan. But the more you look at it, the more you realize that the whole thing is planned. It's
Yeah.
very meticulously planned out.
Yep.
And you start to see patterns that emerge that show you that they meant to do that, and a lot of times they do it over and over and over again. You know, like the little lips at the ends where the lines aren't quite straight. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the joins and the blocks at the Qorikancha.
Yep, the
It's
little
big.
bumps. Yeah.
Yeah, the little bump going across, which makes it way harder to do.
Yeah.
Especially if they had to do that all the way across the top of every block, because it's not just the edge there, but that lip has to be cut into the entire top of the block.
Yeah.
It's
know,
not only
sitting
that,
on.
but the entire face of every rock is worked in such a way that they all have very distinct shapes just on the face of the stone, but they
Yeah.
blend together so well, and it's just breathtakingly beautiful. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
There's just nothing like it. But it is again it seems like this is the same technology utilized in Egypt, because you see
Yeah.
Yeah.
the nubs in some cases much less pronounced there in Egypt, but
Yeah, like
They're
the
there.
granite casing stones around the bottom of the third pyramid is.
Yep, Mankara.
Yeah, looks
That's
just
the
like
one. It looks just like a lot of the stuff here in South America. So
yeah, the lids to those this serapeum box, like the one that's shoved in the corner, has those huge. I mean, it
Yeah.
looks the same.
yeah, Yeah.
So that's another fascinating part of it. And I mean, even the Inca work, like we had pointed out, some of their work is just really fine. And the fact that they were doing what they were doing at the same time as the Gothic cathedral building period is
in Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting
It's
too, because
remarkable.
and again that it was happening here.
Yeah, the
in
Pueblo culture
Americas.
used
Same sort of
local
thing.
stone and adobe.
Yep,
To build
And
the
they
structures.
build amazing structures.
Amazing
Here.
things like 4-story buildings,
Very-
inset into cliff walls.
Yep,
Yeah.
very interesting geometrical shapes in their, the kivas that is repeated over and over again, and inside the kivas they have those same tapered. I think in the kivas they're protrusions, but it's the same sort of, tapered trapezoid
Yep.
in the kivas, and so I love looking at it because it's just it's like you see time and time again that this is all connected in some way.
Yep.
And I want to discover it. I want to know how it was connected. So it's
Well
great.
said.
It's a perfect mystery.
Yeah, I agree, and we'll get the chance to look at more of them. We have plenty more sites. I think for the next one should be interesting. I think that the next one of these we can do. I think Karnak Temple and Luxor Temple.
Yes.
Which would be
Looking
great,
forward to
and
that.
we'll pivot back to Egypt. Take a look at some of that stuff because I made a lot of I saw a lot of stuff that I didn't know about on the recent trip. I've got a lot of footage of that. And like I said, we'll have somebody else I think with us that was on that trip. It should be a good chat as well. So
All right.
good stuff, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kyle's trying to find a Kiva picture here to show you, I think.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
see.
Yeah,
Pull it here.
throw us up.
Yeah,
Okay, so they're not
Okay.
tapered.
Okay.
I had to double check myself here. Let's see if I can. This is kind of like, not the greatest high res
What's
image.
not tapered?
I was thinking of these. This is a bad image, but I'm going to share it just for just to be fast.
Yep.
This is the inside of one of the kivas, but I was thinking of these things.
Let me
Well,
try
that
and make
maybe
that
is
work.
tapered.
I don't know. It's
I
hard
was
to
thinking of these. I was remembering these
tell. But
being.
remember, these are also rebuilt. Most of them are
That's true.
reconstructed.
I'll
How
move
they
it so I
guessed they
capture it.
looked.
Yeah,
You
Randall
can-
Randall pointed out some of the interesting geometry about these things. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he was comparing it to the cathedral builders using very similar geometry.
Yeah.
There it is.
So
All right, I got it. Oh yeah.
yeah, it's not a very high res image. So
It's fine. Actually,
Oh,
send
you
it to
trying
send it to me, and I'll throw it into the video after the
okay.
show.
Okay.
Yeah. But you're seeing it here, but I'll throw it into the video.
okay, cool. Well, I'll find a better one then.
Yeah. Cool.
I'll have time after the show's over.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's just it's been fascinating going through all this stuff with you. So again,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Very honored to do this with you, man. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I like doing it. As I said, it takes me a long time to make the videos that I do in the style that I do, I guess. And so this is a good opportunity to talk about these sites casually and just share a lot of the footage and give people a closer look at it, at a lot of these sites, because I've got a lot of footage and I'm not sure all of it's ever going to make it into the video. So it's a good way to share this data. So yeah, look forward to doing several more. So,
Excellent.
All right.
All right, man. Thanks very much.
cheers. Yeah. Later, guys.
Next time.
Bye.
Good night.